Good morning, delegates. We are going to commence the debate in 5 minutes' time, just to allow a few more of your colleagues to arrive. Thank you.
Good morning. I declare open the debate on the emergency item that was included in our agenda this morning, which is entitled Parliamentary Action Against Transnational Organized Crime, Cybercrime and Hybrid Threats to Democracy and Human Security. I think that everyone in this room knows how dangerous for the international peace and security growing transnational organized crime, cybercrime and hybrid threats is. That's why in the 21st century, when we witness escalation of transnational criminals activity, we as a parliamentarians from all over the world should respond for this loudly. And I'd like to give you a few words about the organization of the debate. We have time until 10 a.m. this morning for the debate. There is no pre-established list of speakers. If you wish to take the floor, simply fill out one of the inscription forms that we are available on this room and pass it on the into the secretary. In order to enable the highest number of speakers to take the floor within the allocated time, speaking time are set at 4 minutes per speaker. Please make good use of your sense of time and bear with the chair when I tell you, or chair tell you that your speaking time is over. All speakers will take the floor from their seats. I will invite the co-authors of the draft resolution to take the floor at the end of the debate so that they may summarize interventions from the floor and react to them. And at this point, I declare the debate open, and I give the floor to the Honourable Speaker, Thomas Tavares Finton from Jamaica, who will chair the debate. Honourable Speaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. And as you heard, the debate is open, and the floor is given to the Netherlands, who will be the first speaker. Please engage your microphone so I can identify you. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Netherlands.
Good morning and thank you. Dear colleagues, the Netherlands welcomes the adoption of this draft resolution. In the same time, let us be clear. Clarity, after all, is the oxygen of truth. While the final text may have chosen softer words, the meaning remains as firm as the principles that inspired its original draft. The resolution, in essence, reaffirms that any use of hybrid means or violation of national airspace constitutes a breach of sovereignty and of international law. That principle does not depend on who commits the act. It depends on the act itself. And we all know which acts and whose ships, drones and aircraft inspired this debate in the first place. By endorsing this text, this Assembly has, perhaps unknowingly, perhaps deliberately, confirmed that aggression, cloaked in ambiguity, is still aggression. The Netherlands, therefore, interprets this resolution in the spirit of its original intent, as a clear reaffirmation that hybrid attacks, disinformation campaigns, and airspace violations are a violation of the UN Charter, and that states bear full responsibility for such actions, regardless of how they choose to name them. In diplomacy, words may be softened, but principles do not dissolve. And history, dear colleagues, has an impeccable memory for those who stood for them and those who choose to stay silent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Canada. Would you engage your mic, please?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It is my honor to stand and speak quickly to the resolution that we find before us. I think all of our jurisdictions can speak quite vigorously to the challenges that we're seeing on transnational crime, especially when it comes to the proliferation of drugs in our communities that are coming across our borders at an alarming rate, especially in our country of Canada. The larger issue that I do want to underline in my intervention is the issue of cybercrime and the issue of disinformation that seems to pervade through our, I would say, non-media outline. So whether we have information flowing through Facebooks or Twitters, yes, I'm going to name them because they are the ways that our populations are spoken to, and that's where they're getting their information. Well, Mr. Chair, I'm finding, quite honestly, we're seeing far more disinformation and misinformation traveling to our populations and influencing the ways that they're reacting with their governments. In the last couple of elections, I can truly underline the challenges that we've had in misinformation, disinformation campaigns from outside actors of our country to try to influence it in certain directions. So, Mr. Chair, I would say that it is important that we be as strong as we possibly can in this resolution. I agree with my friends from the Netherlands that we should not water this down by any stretch of the imagination, and we should try to include a number of issues when it comes to the proliferation of disinformation, when it comes to cyber issues, cyber attacks, cyber crime, because they come in all shapes and sizes. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. May I just remind that if you wish to take the floor in this debate, you need to fill out the request form. And please do so now so we can move along quickly. The next speaker is Finland. Please engage your mic.
Mr. Chair, the Baltic Sea area has been plagued by an increasing number of hybrid attacks. We have had numerous power and data cables cut by cargo vessels dragging their anchors hundreds of kilometers off the sea floor. We have had several airspace violations by fighter jets and bombers or drones, and we have attacks taking place in the cyberspace. Is this a coincidence that all of a sudden we have seen captains dangerously incompetent in operating their vessels in international waters, or is deliberate actions of sabotage? The same goes with pilots. Have they suddenly become so incompetent that they don't know where they are flying? I don't know which is worse, incompetence of deliberate actions of sabotage. In any case, we parliamentarians from around the world should condemn any deliberate hybrid attacks, be it against infrastructure or taking place in the cyberspace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Nobody else has registered to participate. Okay, thank you. Mexico, would you be so kind as to engage your microphone, please? Thank you.
Gracias. Muchas gracias, señor presidente, señoras y señores parlamentarios. Hoy nos convoca una de las amenazas más graves y complejas en nuestro tiempo, que es la expansión del crimen organizado transnacional, que se manifiesta en el narcotráfico, el tráfico de armas, la trata de personas, el lavado de dinero y las nuevas formas de ciberdelincuencia que vulneran la seguridad de nuestros estados y la integridad de nuestras sociedades y también nuestros cielos. Vivimos en una era donde el poder del crimen ya no se mide solo en armas, territorios, sino también en redes digitales, criptomonedas, datos robados y manipulación cibernética. El crimen organizado ha aprendido a moverse más rápido que las leyes y de allá que también de las fronteras y con las tecnologías que superan a los sistemas judiciales y los controles tradicionales. Por eso hoy más que nunca la acción parlamentaria es decisiva y somos nosotros los legisladores quienes debemos construir un marco jurídico internacional coordinado, moderno y preventivo que impida que la impunidad se globalice todavía más mientras la justicia se queda confinada a lo nacional. Necesitamos leyes que se armonicen con los tipos penales y la cooperación judicial y tecnológica internacional. Y no se trata solo de sancionar, sino de prevenir y desmantelar las estructuras que permiten al crimen organizado prosperar, las rutas del narcotráfico, los canales de corrupción, los paraísos fiscales donde se lava el dinero sucio de la delincuencia y junto con eso proteger a los más vulnerables, a los jóvenes reclutados por el crimen, a las mujeres víctimas de la trata y a las comunidades que viven bajo el miedo. En el terreno de la ciberseguridad debemos de asumir una visión global o en el ciberespacio que no tiene fronteras y por tanto la respuesta no puede ser fragmentada, tiene que ser una respuesta global, coordinada. Y así, compañeras y compañeros parlamentarios, el crimen organizado y la cibercriminalidad no son fenómenos aislados, son redes interconectadas que aprovechan la desigualdad, la corrupción y el vacío legal. No en balde, el presidente Donald Trump de Estados Unidos dictó como terrorismo puro a las redes criminales de narcotráfico. No hay que hacer eco de esto, sino simple y sencillamente tomar la atención, hacer nuestro trabajo, leyes, modelos contra el crimen organizado, el cibercrimen, mecanismos de intercambio de información y buenas prácticas y un observatorio parlamentario sobre la ciberseguridad, la delincuencia transnacional y estándares que se puedan medir con indicadores. Es cuanto. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you very much, Madam, for that. The next speaker is, again, Canada.
We have the time.
Yes. You'll notice that Canada is speaking twice, but we do have the time. If you wish to participate in the debate, please indicate by filling out a form so we can move smoothly. Thank you. Canada, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers collègues. Le Canada, bien entendu, salue cette résolution qui est plus qu'essentielle et nécessaire. Le crime organisé transnational est aujourd'hui plus sophistiqué, plus numérique et plus dangereux et il fragilise nos démocraties. Nous devons donc agir ensemble sur 3 fronts en particulier. Premièrement, le trafic des armes, des stupéfiants et des êtres humains. Ces trafics ne sont pas isolés. Ils financent la corruption, les conflits et la déstabilisation des États. Nous recommandons donc que la résolution mette un accent particulier sur la traçabilité des flux financiers et des bénéficiaires effectifs afin de couper ces réseaux à la source. Deuxièmement, le renforcement des capacités parlementaires. Nos parlements doivent disposer d'outils de contrôle, d'accès à l'information et de collaboration internationale pour faire face à ces crimes qui ignorent les frontières. Et troisièmement, une coopération internationale beaucoup plus audacieuse. Nous devons partager nos données, nos meilleures pratiques et mobiliser la technologie, y compris pour surveiller les cryptoactifs utilisés pour le blanchiment et le financement illicite. Le Canada croit que cette lutte ne doit jamais se faire au détriment des droits humains et de l'état de droit. En un mot, nous réclamons plus de transparence, plus de coopération, plus de courage parlementaire. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Canada. And the next speaker will be from Myanmar, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the Thai delegation submission correctly identifies the unprecedented humanitarian consequences of this crisis, which has subjected hundreds of thousands of people to conditions of modern slavery. The draft resolutions alarm that scam compounds exploiting governance gaps in Myanmar. Since 2021 coup, the breakdown of the rule of law in Myanmar has created vast ungoverned spaces, particularly along our shared border. These borders have become breeding grounds for the transnational criminal organizations that operate with impunity. The humanitarian impact is staggering. Victims from over 70 countries are trafficked, held against their will, and forced to perpetrate scams under the threat of torture and violence. The crisis not only devastates the individual lives, but also fuels a shadow economy whose revenues rival the GDP of several Mekong states, threatening regional stability. To ensure the IPU mobilizes an effective and humanitarian-focused parliamentary response, we urge your committee to emphasize the point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. And just before we move to the next speaker, I'd like to just pause the discussion to indicate some questions relating to the drafting committee, which is critical in completing the process of this emergency item. Let me remind you that Standing Committee Rule 16 stipulates that the composition of the drafting committee shall take into account equitable geographical distribution and the political and gender balance, and that the number of its members shall not exceed 11. We have received preliminary indications of interest in participating in the drafting committee from a number of delegations, and have also been informed of the decisions taken by the geopolitical groups. These are already submitted: the African Group, Asia Pacific Group, and Latin America. Outstanding, the Arab Group, Eurasia, and 12+. I would invite those geographical groups who have not yet nominated members to the drafting committee to do so on or before 1 p.m. today. Members of the drafting committee are requested to note that they will meet today from 12:30 to 6:30 in the CCV room here in the conference center. The debate continues with So that having been said, there are no more indications of persons willing to or prepared to participate. Suriname? Thank you very much.
Thank
have the floor,
you, Mr.
Suriname.
Chairperson. I wanted to reflect on some issues, like the first one, when we talk about, speaking of drug trafficking, I stated yesterday, I think, and the day before yesterday, it's very useful to look at drug trafficking. But when you go to the root cause, let's see the countries who produces the chemicals because without those chemicals, we cannot produce a lot of drugs in a lot of developing countries. We have to take that also into consideration, the chairperson, on those issues. The next point I wanted to raise is the discrimination. When you look at the root causes of vulnerability, including poverty and inequality, there is, for a lot of countries, a lot of discrimination when it goes to financial issues. Like, what is renta? The interest which a lot of countries pay, the developing countries especially, is higher than a lot of highly industrialized countries pay to the financial institutions. And that creates inequality and poverty, Mr. Chairperson. And I can go on like this, that the world is very unequal. When it regards to the foreign interference in democratic institutions, we as Suriname are victims on that, on foreign interference from Western Europe, my chairperson. I hope that this will be stressed, that foreign interference in local issues and democratic institutions must be avoided at any cost, mainly in the election period. You see that happens a lot, Mr. Chairperson. When it comes to the protection of parliamentarians and request the IPU Committee on Human Rights of Parliamentarians to monitor and document attacks against them, let's start to create facilities that the parliamentarians from the SIDS, the small island developing states, can participate in these international fora. The SIDS, a lot of SIDS countries cannot participate because they don't have the financial possibilities. So I once again ask the board and the elite of the IPU to facilitate at least one member of a small island developing states to participate, to be able to participate in the IPU. Otherwise, there's no point of inclusion of these small and island developing states. And this is a huge point of discrimination, my chair. I thank you for your attention, and I hope that my points will be taken note of that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think the point that you are making is that the small island developing states are extremely subject to the very things that we are talking about in this emergency resolution. Our next speaker is? Well, if there are no other speakers, we are closing the debate with a presentation from Thailand. So if there are no other speakers, I'm going to invite Thailand to take the floor. I'm beginning to feel like an auctioneer. For second and last call. That's it. Thailand, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, on behalf of the delegation of Thailand, I wish to express our sincere appreciation to all member parliaments for supporting the inclusion of this emergency item. Your support reflects our shared recognition that transnational organized crime, cybercrime, and hybrid threats are no longer distant concerns. They are clear and present dangers to democracy, human rights, and global stability. Mr. Chair, this resolution is born out of an alarming reality. Across Southeast Asia and beyond, we have witnessed the rise of industrial-scale cyber scam compound, criminal complex that traffic and enslave hundreds of thousands of people, forcing them to commit cybercrime under threat of torture and detention. These criminal economies now generate up to $75 billion annually, rivaling the GDP of entire nations. But this is not only a regional issue. It is a global phenomenon now expanding into Africa, South Asia, and even Europe, where organized crime, cyber attack, disinformation, and hybrid threat began to converge. The line between criminality and political warfare has blurred. Mr. Chair, we are the guardian of democratic institutions, the defenders of human rights, and the bridge between law and justice. Colleagues, our resolution also acknowledged the emergency of hybrid threat, including cyber-enabled sabotage, disinformation campaigns, transnational drug cartels, and attacks on critical infrastructure, which collectively erode public trust and undermine national sovereignty. When such tactics are orchestrated or supported by state or non-state actors, they may constitute violation of international law and, in certain circumstances, acts of international terrorism. Parliament must therefore ensure that all countermeasures, digital, legal, or security-related, remain firmly grounded in international human rights and humanitarian law. In defending our democracies, we must not abandon the very value that define them. Mr. Chair, this resolution is more than a call for action. It is a parliamentary shield for democracy, for truth, and for human dignity. It reaffirms that organized crime and hybrid threat cannot be confronted by government alone. They require legislative vigilance, transnational solidarity, and the moral leadership of parliaments. Thailand stands ready to work with all member parliaments to ensure that this resolution becomes a living framework, one that protects people, restores accountability, and strengthens the democracy fabric of our societies. Let us act together for democracy, for security, and for human rights. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to all members who participated in the debate. Thank you for keeping to your time, and thank you for the useful and insightful presentations from you all. The debate is now closed, and I'm informed that we are moving straight into the general debate immediately. So thank you very much for your attention, and more importantly, for your cooperation during the emergency items. Thank you again.
Good morning, Excellencies, the speakers and honorable members, distinguished delegates. My name is Jabulani Mabuza, the Speaker of the House of Assembly of the Kingdom of Eswatini. We are hereby commencing our general debates, and I will start by Sweden. But let me remind you, colleagues, that the time is very important. And as I am chairing this session, I'm going to remind you in case you exceed the allocated time. Sweden, you may continue and will be followed by Bahamas.
The floor is mine. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, fellow parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen. It was only a few blocks from here that the headquarters of the League of United Nations was founded in the aftermath of the First World War. With the horrors of the war in fresh memory, an organization was established with a bold ambition of putting an end to war and violating of human rights. However, there are a high number of armed conflicts around the world today. Actually, more than 120, according to the figures of IPU. And this means suffering among civilians, including women and children and other vulnerable groups. Leaders of several nations have chosen war over cooperation. Around the world, we are witnessing violation of norms and standards that we all have committed to uphold in the area of international humanitarian law. We are also witnessing the most significant conflict on the European continent since World War II. It's the first time since the World War II that a European country have attacked another country. Russia's aggressive, unprovoked war against Ukraine is a blatant attack on international humanitarian law and rule-based order that was established by the United Nations in the aftermath of the Second World War II. Supporting Ukraine is my country's top foreign policy priority. All parties in the Swedish parliament stand behind Ukraine. Our commitment to Ukraine's security, sovereignty, and territorial integrity remains firm. Sweden, together with our European allies, will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. And we support Ukraine's right to its territory, to its self-determination and integrity. Russia is waging a war against one nation, Ukraine, but in doing so, it's violating the principles of international law that underpin the security of all of us. It is in our common interest that the rule-based world order and international law are upheld. International law is crystal clear. There can be no rewards for aggression. The UN Charter, which enshrines the fundamental principles of sovereign equality, territorial integrity, and political independence of all states, remains critical. Needless to say, Sweden welcomes efforts to put an end to Russia's war in Ukraine and achieve a just and lasting peace and safeguards Ukraine's security and territory, as well as stability in all Europe. We don't need any hybrid war. We don't want to have the drones over and in our territory. And this means a peace that is in accordance with the UN Charter and that ensures that Russia will not attack Ukraine again or any other. The Swedish speaker will, together with the chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, host the 4th Parliamentarian Summit of the Crimea Platform in Stockholm the 23rd to 24th of November. We urge all invited speakers of Parliament to register, and I am very pleased to know that Madam President Tulia Axon as well have signed up to take part in the Crimea Platform in Stockholm. Thank you very much for this important registration. But let me also say that the Swedish support of Ukraine goes beyond military defense, and it's based on human rights and ensuring service for 23 million people on the survey of a clear and support for the humanitarian. But let me say in the last seconds that we as politicians, we can make a difference. We can make a difference with our debates, with our lawmaking, but also in cooperation with NGOs, with the civil society, with business, and everybody in the society who are engaged. And let's continue to work for peace and stability. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Sweden. May I now hand the floor to India. India, you have the floor.
Honorable Chair, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Namaste, a very good morning to all of you. Humanitarian principles, as you all know, form the very foundation of our shared humanity and human civilization. I would like to start with a couplet of Sanskrit verse shlokas. Paropkaraya phalanti vriksha, paropkaraya vahanti nadya, paropkaraya duhanti gava, paropkarartha mid shariram. Meaning, trees bear fruit for the benefit of others, rivers flow for the benefit of others, cow milk for the benefit of others. This body is also meant for the service of others. This verse speaks volume of spiritual richness of Indian philosophy that guides the mankind to work for the welfare and the upliftment of others. Today we are witnessing an alarming rise in the conflict, crisis and disasters, each devastating millions worldwide. At a time when unity and collective actions are crucial, global humanitarian efforts face serious challenges. International humanitarian assistance is declining, multilateralism is in crisis, and growing mistrust in international institutions is further weakening the global response to major humanitarian needs. In these trying times, India provides a hope. Yes, India provides a hope for the world. India's approach to humanitarian action is shaped by civilizational ethos, strategic interest, and evolving global role. While India supports humanitarian norms and assistance, it does so through a lens of non-interference, pluralism, and regional stability. The ancient ideal of Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, the world is one family, has been the guiding light of India's humanitarian efforts. My dear friends, distinguished delegates, India has always upheld humanitarian principles. We ratified the Geneva Convention in 1950. As a strong votary of multilateralism, India has been a founding member of the UN, ILO, NAM, and G77 and many other such multilateral institutions. A champion of decolonization, India has stood against the apartheid, and today we are raising the voice of Global South. India strongly advocates for comprehensive reform of multilateral institutions. As the largest working democracy of the world, India believes global decision-making must be more inclusive and representative. Acknowledging the increasing shortfall in humanitarian funding, we urge the governments, international agencies, corporates, and other stakeholders to enhance support to the UN humanitarian assistance system. India also calls for greater global cooperation to save lives and provide safe, sustained, and timely supply of essential humanitarian assistance to those affected by the disasters and conflicts. India has significantly contributed to 49 of 71 UN peacekeeping missions, with over 200,000 personnel servicing worldwide, making us one of the largest troop contributors. In 2007, we proudly deployed the first all-women peacekeeping contingent, which has trained. In India, we have trained more than 93 countries and their women forces. Our Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation, ITEC program, offers over 12,000 scholarships annually to professionals of developing countries, covering more than 300 plus courses across 120 premier institutions in India. During the COVID-19 pandemic, under the Vaccine Maitri program, India supplied 301 million vaccine doses to 100 plus countries, gifting more than 15 million doses. Our Arogya Maitri initiative continues to provide essential medicines to nations in crisis. India has emerged as a first responder in global crisis. In the past 5 years, India has extended humanitarian aid to over 150 countries. These operations reflect our ethos, service before self. Domestically, India has built a robust disaster management framework through the Disaster Management Act of 2005. The National Disaster Response Force, with 16,000 plus trained personnel, have saved more than 159,000 lives and evacuated close to 1 million people from disaster-stricken areas both within country and outside the country. Our disaster response is backed by a strong financing mechanism, which include the National Disaster Risk Management Fund and the SDRMF, which is the State Disaster Risk Management Fund, the PM Care Fund, corporate social responsibility contributions, and initiatives by the NGOs. I'll just take 30 seconds more. While India believes that the primary responsibility to aid lies with the national governments, we firmly uphold that the principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence in responding to all humanitarian institutions. Fellow parliamentarians, every human being deserves a life of dignity. I hope you agree with me. Every human being deserves a life of dignity. Who believes in that can raise their hands. And let us rise above divisions and recommit ourselves to the service of humanity. And let us pledge to uplift the distressed and stand by those in need. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Your time is up. Thank you very much, India. Our next speaker is Myanmar. Myanmar, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Honorable President, distinguished delegates. I stand before you on behalf of the people of Myanmar, represented by the committee representing Birangsu Hluttaw, the democratically elected representative of our nations, who continue to uphold the mandate given to us. Today, Myanmar endures one of the gravest humanitarian crises of our time, a crisis not of nature, but of human cruelty. Since the military coup in Myanmar, the junta has waged war against its own citizens. Over 6,800 civilians have been killed, 22,000 arbitrarily detained, and more than 5 million displaced. Entire villages have been destroyed, and airstrikes have targeted schools, hospitals, and places of worship. In addition to the manufactured political crisis, Myanmar has suffered devastating natural disasters, including Typhoon Yagi and the March 2025 earthquake, which claims over 5,300 lives. Despite these tragedies, the military has conducted more than 600 attacks during supposed ceasefire, prioritizing political control over the welfare of its citizens. These actions constitute war crimes and crimes against humanity. The hunters continue to target civilians, obstruct humanitarian access, and weaponizing it, violating fundamental principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Under these situations, the planned elections in December further deepen the crisis. These fake elections are an attempt to legitimize military rule. On the other hand, the junta control less than 40% of the territory, while political opponents are imprisoned and the media are silent. Myanmar people clearly reject these illegitimate elections and remain steadfast in their demand for democracy. Honorable Presidents, distinguished delegates, as parliamentarians, we face a test of conscious neutrality in the face of atrocity is complexity. So therefore, I respectfully urge you all to take the following actions: rejecting the military's sham elections, and reaffirm the IPU's recognitions of the committee representing Piraungsu Hluttaw and Myanmar's elected representative as the legitimate parliamentary interlocutor, and demand the immediate and unconditional release of all political prisoners, including our leaders, Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and President U Win Myint, all detained parliamentarians, and demanding immediate and impedient humanitarian access across all territory, and imposing comprehensive sanctions, including arms and jet fuel embargoes, and to support Myanmar's democratic and ethnic stakeholders for a realistic solutions on the current conflict and for a peaceful future. Dear friends and distinguished delegates, let us not allow dictatorships to be disguised as democracy. Let us not allow humanitarianism to be hostage to tyranny. And then let us, with the compassions and convictions for the people of Myanmar and for all those suffering under compassions. And so thank you so much for your kind attentions, and thank you so much for your solidarity with the people of Myanmar and our fight for democracy and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Myanmar. The next speaker is IDLO, International Development Law Organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, honorable members of Parliament, I am pleased to take the floor on behalf of the International Development Law Organization, the only global intergovernmental organization devoted exclusively to promoting the rule of law for peace and sustainable development. Humanitarian crises happen where justice systems are weak, where laws exclude, and where trust in institutions has eroded. This is why strengthening the rule of law is essential. Effective legal systems can prevent crises and violent conflict, provide the space for humanitarian actors to operate safely, and create pathways for communities to move from emergency response towards lasting peace and sustainable development. Across the world, IDLO supports states to build these enabling environments by working with parliaments, governments, justice institutions, and communities to promote legal reform, strengthen judicial capacity, and ensure that justice is accessible and fair, even in fragile and crisis contexts. Honorable members, parliaments play a vital role in this effort. As guardians of the rule of law, you translate humanitarian principles into national legislation, ensure that budgets protect those in need, and that laws are fair, clear, and non-discriminatory. By promoting participatory and transparent lawmaking, you help rebuild trust between people and institutions, the very foundation of peace. IDLO remains committed to working with you to reinforce the global humanitarian system through stronger legal frameworks, principled governance, and inclusive, people-centered justice. In these challenging times, upholding humanity requires commitment to the rule of law. IDLO is at your side in this noble endeavor. I thank you.
Thank you very much, IDLO. And the next speaker is the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Union for Mediterranean He's not there.
Morning. سادة المنصة الكريمة، سيدات والسادة الحضور، اسمحوا لي في البداية بالأصالة عن نفسي وبالإنابة عن زملائي أعضاء البرلمان الأورو متوسطي UFM، البرلمان اتحاد من أجل المتوسط، 43 دولة. ها هنا نفخر أن نشارككم مناقشتكم البناءة في زمن تتصارع فيه التحديات، ويظل السلام العالمي الركن الأصيل الذي يقود العالم إلى الازدهار ورخاء الأمم. لقد أثبتت التجارب التاريخية أن أول خطوة في تاريخ النمو هي إطفاء نيران الصراع وإعلاء صوت الحوار والعقل. نعم، نقف أمام هذه التجربة التي حدثت بالأسبوع الماضي. هذه المبادرة الناجحة التي قادتها الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وجمهورية مصر العربية ودولة قطر، والتي أفضت إلى اتفاق شرم الشيخ لإنهاء الحرب في غزة، والذي تم توقيعه الأسبوع الماضي، لقد أثبتت قمة شرم الشيخ أن إرادة الحوار أقوى من صوت السلاح. هذه المبادرة الشجاعة تمثل نموذجاً مشرفاً لما يمكن أن تحققه الدبلوماسية والتعاون الدولي. فالسلام ليس مجرد اتفاق سياسي، بل هو منظومة قيم إنسانية تقوم على العدالة والاحترام. إن اتفاق شرم الشيخ لا ينهي حرباً فحسب، بل يفتح الأبواب أمام تحقيق السلام العادل والدائم في الشرق الأوسط، وأمام تحقيق الرخاء والنمو والازدهار المستدام، ويخلق فرصاً جديدة للتجارة والاستثمار والتعليم والتقنية، ويعزز التكامل الإقليمي ويدعم القيم الإنسانية العليا. نحن نعبر عن كامل تقديرنا لما قام به الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي، الذي جسد برؤيته المتوازنة التزام مصر التاريخي بحماية الأمن الإقليمي ودعم الحلول السياسية وصوت الحكمة في زمن الانقسام. كما نحيي تقديرنا العميق لسيد الرئيس دونالد ترامب، الذي أعاد للسلام بعده الحركي القائم على الفعل لا الانتظار، وعلى المبادرة لا التردد. ومن منبر الاتحاد البرلماني الدولي نوجه رسالة برلمانية إلى قائدي البلدين الصديقين الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي والرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب. نحيي القادة الذين اجتمعوا في شرم الشيخ ليؤكدوا أن السلام ليس شعاراً بل التزاماً، وندعو الطرفين الإسرائيلي والفلسطيني إلى الالتزام بمبادئ الاتفاق واحترام تعهداتهما. إن الحفاظ على ما تحقق في شرم الشيخ هو واجب دولي وسياسي وأخلاقي، وليكن هذا الاتفاق خطوة على طريق إقامة الدولتين وفتح صفحة جديدة من التعاون والازدهار الإنساني. إن دور البرلمانات ليس مراقبة الأحداث من بعيد، بل المشاركة في صنع التاريخ. ندعو كافة برلمانات العالم للعمل معاً من أجل تعبئة برلمانية دولية واسعة لتثبيت مسار السلام، والتأكيد على أن السلام الحقيقي يعني احترام الكرامة الإنسانية وتجديد المواقف البرلمانية المبدئي في مساندة الشعب الفلسطيني. شكراً سيادة الرئيس، وأدعوكم جميعاً إلى تبني هذه المبادرة والعمل على نجاحها، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is PNND, the Parliamentarians for Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament.
Bonjour à toutes et tous. Monsieur le Président, chers et chers collègues, soyons clairs, la nucléarisation du monde est le plus grand fardeau qui pèse sur l'humanité. En tant qu'ancienne parlementaire suisse, C'est un honneur pour moi de représenter ici les parlementaires pour la non-prolifération et le désarmement nucléaire, un réseau mondial de législateurs qui travaillent sur des initiatives visant à prévenir la prolifération nucléaire et à parvenir à un monde sans armes nucléaires. Les armes nucléaires pourraient déclencher des catastrophes humanitaires encore plus grandes de ce que le Japon a souffert avec les bombes atomiques sur Hiroshima et Nagasaki, et encore la catastrophe récente de Fukushima. Je me réfère ici à l'intervention de notre collègue du Japon d'hier. C'est bien pour ces raisons que vendredi dernier, le 17 octobre, les parlementaires pour la non-prolifération et le désarmement nucléaire ont lancé un appel fort pour la journée de l'abolition nucléaire à l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies. Cet appel a été signé par plus de 600 organisations et plus de 1200 personnes de 99 pays. Cet appel contient 5 points et je cite « Nous, sous-signés, appelons donc les dirigeants, les législateurs et les responsables à tous les niveaux de gouvernance, local, municipal, étatique, national et régional, à affirmer que la menace ou l'utilisation d'armes nucléaires est inadmissible. Deuxième point, à promouvoir des mesures concrètes de la part des États dotés d'armes nucléaires et leurs alliés pour mettre en œuvre cette obligation, notamment en désactivant leurs forces nucléaires et en adoptant des politiques visant à ne jamais déclencher une guerre nucléaire. Troisièmement, à s'engager à parvenir à l'élimination mondiale des armes nucléaires au plus tard à l'occasion du centenaire de l'ONU en 2045 et à prendre immédiatement des mesures, notamment par le biais de négociations multilatérales pour mettre en œuvre cet engagement. Quatrièmement, à réduire les budgets consacrés aux armes nucléaires et mettre fin aux investissements publics et privés dans l'industrie des armes nucléaires. Et cinquièmement, à réorienter ces fonds vers le renforcement des Nations unies, la promotion du maintien de la paix et la résolution des conflits, l'accélération des mesures de protection du climat. Et pour conclure, il est important que les États-Unis acceptent l'offre de la Russie de prolonger la limitation prévue dans le traité sur le contrôle des armes nucléaires entre les États-Unis d'Amérique et la Fédération de Russie au-delà du 5 février 2026, soit jusqu'au 5 février 2027. Il s'agit du traité dit New Start de 2010. Pour conclure, chers et chers collègues, adhérez à notre organisation. Il suffit de vous inscrire sur le site de pnnd.org qui vous attend en 6 langues. Je vous remercie de votre appui et de votre attention.
Thank you very much, PNND. And the next speaker is Parliamentary Assembly of Turkic States.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen. As a Secretary General, I am very delighted to represent here, in the capacity of observer, the Parliamentary Assembly of Turkic States. In short, Turkpa, it's a great honor to address this distinguished assembly today. Turkpa is a parliamentary dimension of Turkic cooperation, and while implementing its mandate, Turkpa attached particular significance to the exploring opportunities for constructive engagement with regional and global interparliamentary organizations. In this context, I'd like to mention that Turkpa has been participating in the IPU activities as an observer since 2011. The Inter-parliamentary Union platform provides a great opportunity to share the views on the issues of global agenda, including those in the field of the humanitarian policy. Every day we live, we witness the reality that violations of humanitarian norms continue around the world, whether through countless ongoing conflicts and war, or through the process related to climate change and migration. All these factors have a significant impact on humanitarian norms. They are one of the most important issues on the agenda of leading international organizations in the recent years, since they cause profound humanitarian suffering and challenge the very foundation of international law and solidarity. The current global situation is requiring to take concrete actions to uphold humanitarian norms and ensure protection for the most vulnerable. Governments, parliaments, and international organizations must act together to translate humanitarian commitments into real and effective measures on the ground, since they are the foundation of peace, stability, and dignity. Therefore, these challenges are not issues to be resolved by individual states, but within the framework of international cooperation. This is a responsibility of all nations, parliaments, governments, and peoples. In this context, participation of Turkey in such an event is very important. Cooperation of Turkic states with other neighbors in the Eurasian space and a good neighborly policy contribute to the formation of common approach to problems. In conclusion, I'd like to note that Turkey stands ready to deepen cooperation with Inter-parliamentary Union and other parliamentary platforms to further expand the frontiers of international cooperation, and is open to collaboration with other international organizations to discuss the issues of mutual interest, including those related to the upholding and supporting humanitarian norms. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Takpa. And the next speaker is COPAL, Permanent Conference of Political Parties in Latin America and the Caribbean. And then it will be the
Buenos días. Mesa de honor, distinguidos parlamentarios. Agradezco la oportunidad de permitirme dirigir unas palabras a nombre de la Conferencia Permanente de Partidos Políticos de América Latina y el Caribe, COPAL, y de su presidente, el senador mexicano Alejandro Moreno Cárdenas, quien me ha honrado para representar a nuestra organización ante este importante foro parlamentario mundial. La organización que represento, la COPAL, es una organización regional fundada en 1979 que agrupa a más de 75 partidos políticos progresistas de más de 30 países de América Latina y el Caribe. Entre sus objetivos principales se encuentra la promoción, defensa y fortalecimiento de la democracia, la paz, el desarme y los derechos humanos, la justicia social, la integración, así como la defensa de la soberanía de los países y la autodeterminación de los pueblos. Me dirijo a ustedes para reflexionar sobre una realidad ineludible y a menudo dolorosa: la situación de los derechos humanos en América Latina y el Caribe. Una región llena de cultura y de enorme potencial, pero lamentablemente arrastra consigo una historia compleja y desafiante en la garantía de las libertades y los derechos fundamentales de sus ciudadanos. La situación actual por la que atraviesan varios países de Latinoamérica y el Caribe es una constante lucha contra la impunidad, el abuso de poder y la falta de acceso a la justicia y la discriminación estructural. La región ostenta la tasa anual de homicidios más alta del mundo, la violencia criminal, las ejecuciones extrajudiciales, las desapariciones forzadas y la violencia de género, incluidas las altas tasas de feminicidio, son flagelos que arrebatan vidas y siembran el temor. El desafío se agrava por el recurso a la militarización de la seguridad pública de varios países, lo que en la mayoría de veces es un aumento de los abusos y una disminución a la rendición de cuentas. Observamos también con gran preocupación el retroceso democrático en varios países, con líderes que, tras ser elegidos, destruyan las garantías institucionales, atacan y desmantelan la independencia judicial. Esto crea terreno fértil para el autoritarismo y la violación sistemática de los derechos. Un ejemplo claro de esto que menciono es el caso de México, cuya reforma judicial fue calificada como una maniobra regresiva que erosiona la independencia del Poder Judicial mexicano. Como México, existen varios países en nuestra región que actualmente la libertad de expresión también está en peligro. Periodistas y defensores de los derechos humanos son estigmatizados, hostigados y, en el peor de los casos, asesinados. América Latina está marcado por una profunda desigualdad y discriminación que afecta desproporcionadamente a grupos históricamente vulnerables como los pueblos indígenas y afrodescendientes. A pesar de este sombrío panorama, la lucha por la dignidad sigue viva. La sociedad civil, los organismos internacionales y los parlamentos han sido y siguen siendo bastiones en la defensa de los derechos humanos. Es por ello que nos debemos a un triple compromiso: fortalecer la democracia y la justicia, exigiendo a los Estados el cumplimiento de las decisiones de organismos como la ONU, la OEA, el Alto Comisionado de las Naciones Unidas para los Derechos Humanos, la Corte Interamericana y la Comisión Interparlamentaria. La lucha contra la pobreza y la desigualdad extrema y la inseguridad alimentaria son también una batalla para los derechos económicos, sociales, culturales y ambientales. Hacemos un llamado a trabajar juntos para abordar las causas profundas de la violencia y la desigualdad con la urgencia que el momento exige, para que el derecho a la vida digna y en libertad sea realidad inquebrantable para todos los habitantes, no solo los países latinoamericanos y caribeños, sino para todo el mundo. Muchas gracias.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. And the next speaker is the UN World Food Programme.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to speak on behalf of the World Food Programme today. The world is facing historic and alarming milestones for the first time since the creation of a measure called the International Food Security Phase Classification. We have two concurrent famines, one in Sudan, one in Palestine. This is not a natural disaster. This is a man-made crisis driven by conflict and compounded by restricted humanitarian access. More than 300 million people are facing acute hunger. This has more than doubled in 5 years. We know what it takes to defeat famine. Where World Food Programme and partners have sustained access, food insecurity and malnutrition rates drop. But we need two things. We need access and we need resources. Unfortunately, both are under severe pressure. With an estimated 30% reduction in humanitarian funding in 2025 and consistent attacks on humanitarian principles, the humanitarian ecosystem is at a breaking point. Funding shortfalls could push an additional 10 to 15 million people into catastrophic hunger. Already, we are seeing devastating consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, each day the World Food Programme and our humanitarian partners reach the most vulnerable in the most complex situations. Since the ceasefire in Gaza, we have ensured that bread is already reaching 500,000 people each day. We are working to scale operations with our partners to ensure we reach those in need. We continue to reach new communities who have been under siege in Sudan, and we work around the world with national governments to serve their communities. The Inter-parliamentary Union is an essential partner in continuing to ensure this response and ensuring we can have the impact on people's lives. The IPU not only helps us to deliver assistance, but demonstrate how this global solidarity is relevant to your citizens, to your electorate. Your leadership helps to mobilize the political will to secure resources and protect humanitarian principles, and together with the World Food Programme, we can work together to prevent hunger and save millions of lives. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Azerbaijan.
Honorable President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, humanitarian crisis, whether triggered by armed conflicts or natural disasters, continue to affect millions of people worldwide. Women, children, and other vulnerable groups are disproportionately affected. Parliaments play a central role in this endeavor. We must mobilize political will, champion inclusive governance, and promote dialogue across societies. A multi-sectoral, inclusive, and equitable approach is essential. We must safeguard humanitarian actions in times of crisis, ensure the integrity of international humanitarian law, and reaffirm our commitment to multilateral efforts. Parliament must act together to mobilize international organizations for rapid responses and keep humanitarian issues high on the agenda. The IPU, for its part, could consider establishing a working group or holding an extraordinary meeting to address this shortcoming. As to my country, Azerbaijan, it has consistently upheld these principles. Azerbaijan is deeply committed to protecting human rights in conflict situations. Azerbaijan has been a main co-sponsor at the UN General Assembly in its adopting a resolution on missing persons since 2002 and supports the UN Commission on the Status of Women resolution on the release of women and children taken hostage in armed conflicts. In September 2023, Azerbaijan hosted its first international conference on clarifying the fate of missing persons, making the International Day of the Victims of Enforced Disappearances. Humanitarian work must respect equity as much as equality. As the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies notes, humanitarian assistance must adapt to the needs and backgrounds of those affected to ensure genuine equality in access and participation. Also, humanitarian aid must remain free from political influence to preserve its role as a livelihood for human dignity, development, and stability. Let us reaffirm our collective commitment to humanitarian norms, support those affected, and strengthen the international system to respond quickly and fairly to crisis. Together, through joint effort, legislative action, and multilateral cooperation, we can ensure that humanitarian action remains effective, equitable, and above all, human. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Belarus. And please, you are reminded of the limit timer as you do your presentation. It's just in front of you.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing an unprecedented rise in international tensions, driven by the complex process shaping a new multipolar world order. Today, the call for justice is more relevant than ever. Peoples who have endured the yoke of colonialism and have been most severely affected by devastating wars are advocating for peace, sovereign equality, and the right to independently determine their own destinies and path for progressive development. Belarus welcomes the strengthening of new centers of multipolarity, such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, the constructive role of many other organizations, including our Inter-parliamentary Union. However, there are forces and certain political elites that impede the formation of this new world order, disregard international law, encourage arms races, wage sanction wars, interfere in the internal affairs of states, sustain active conflicts, and obstruct peace initiatives. These destabilizing factors amplify tangible challenges and threats to international peace and security, and give rise to numerous humanitarian crises, sometimes shocking by their brutality and cynicism. Since independence, Belarus has pursued a peaceful foreign policy and has always advocated a safer world. We are convinced that in the context of geopolitical turmoil, it is essential to place the principles of good neighborhood, equal and mutually respectful dialogue at the heart of the interstate relations. Over the past years, my country has actively promoted an initiative to launch a broad dialogue on security and cooperation in the spirit of San Francisco, which was proposed by President of my country, Alexander Lukashenko. Today, together with our partners, we are working on the development of the Eurasian Charter for Diversity and Multipolarity in the 21st century, which aims to reduce tensions in the military political sphere, as well as strengthen humanitarian dimension. Parliamentary diplomacy, with its eminent potential, can and must contribute to building bridges of mutual understanding, respect, friendship, and solidarity. Our delegation is ready to cooperate in this direction with all parliamentarians. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Belarus. And the next speaker is Suriname. Suriname, you have the floor.
Honorable Chair, distinguished colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to address this assembly on behalf of the Parliament of Republic of Suriname. We align ourselves with the statement delivered earlier by our delegation and reaffirm Suriname's deep commitment to upholding humanitarian norms and strengthening humanitarian actions in all its forms. Today, humanity faces multiple and overlapping crises as armed conflicts, food insecurity, forced migration, public health emergencies, and accelerating impact of climate change. These challenges test not only the capacity of our institution, but also the strength of our competition. Suriname is a small developing state, but with a large responsibility. As one of the world's few carbon-negative countries, we continue to protect our 93% of our forests, a living shield for the planet and for the future generations. Yet, despite this global contribution, our people face the humanity consequence of the climate change every year as flooding, coastal erosion, and displacement of families in our interior regions. For us, climate change is not merely an environmental issue, it is a humanitarian crisis affecting homes, livelihoods, and entire communities. That's why Suriname calls for stronger international commitment. We argue our partnership to simplify, to go for example, the Green Climate Fund and prioritize grants over loans, because no nation should go into debt for protecting the earth. Parliaments, including ours, must ensure that such resources are used transparently and effectively. Honorable Chair, humanitarian norms remind us the solidarity and it's not charity, it is justice. Suriname stands ready to work with all IPU members to turn compassion into concrete action.
Suriname?
Stronger,
your time
yes, stronger partnership for fair
Please
financing
conclude,
and
sir.
sustained investment in humanitarian and climate resilience. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is from Kenya. Kenya, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from the citizens and Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. As you're all aware, Kenya is still in the throes of deep grief following the passing of the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, a former Prime Minister, a long-serving parliamentarian, and one of Africa's most inspirational leaders, who was interred last Sunday. In life, Right Honorable Odinga was a true champion of peace and democracy, rule of law and equality, an outstanding defender of human rights and constitutionalism, and unwavering Pan-Africanist. During his tenure as the African Union High Representative for Infrastructure Development, Raila Amolo Odinga believed in a peaceful, united, and interconnected Africa, where citizens move freely in pursuit of their dreams and livelihoods, and where leadership is inspired by accountability, good governance, and selfless service. In his passing, we celebrate an icon who tirelessly gave a voice to the voiceless and whose devotion to making the world a better place for humanity will echo down the ages for generations to come. I thank all of you, individually and collectively, for standing with Kenya and Africa at the most difficult and painful moment. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to sincerely commend the Inter-parliamentary Union for convening this timely discussion framed by the theme of upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crisis, a theme that resonates deeply with the realities facing our world today. In every region, humanity continues to be tested by conflicts, climate-induced disasters, pandemics, food insecurity, forced displacement, and economic instability. This crisis demands not only our compassion, but also resolute political will and coordinated parliamentary action. In Kenya, we have integrated humanitarian consideration into national legislative agenda, while diligently deploying parliamentary diplomacy. We have enacted laws and established frameworks that strengthen disaster preparedness, facilitate humanitarian assistance, and safeguard the rights of displaced persons and vulnerable communities. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to consolidate these gains and advance this worthy cause further, the Parliament of Kenya commits to do the following: strengthen domestic laws to align fully with international humanitarian obligations, enhance oversight to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches those most in need, promote inclusivity by engaging women, youth, and marginalized groups in humanitarian decision-making, and lastly, support diplomatic efforts aimed at upholding the integrity of IHL across all nations. As we deliberate here in Geneva, the cradle of human action, let us reaffirm our shared responsibility to humanity. The challenges before us transcend borders, so must our solutions. Through solidarity, multilateral cooperation, and parliamentary leadership, we can build a world that upholds the sanctity of life, even in the darkest of times. May the spirit of humanity continue to guide our parliaments and our collective actions. Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, from Kenya. And our next speaker is Australia. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker Mabuza of Eswatini. Dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be with you as a delegate for Australia. We signed the 1949 Geneva Convention in 1950, and Australia has ratified 3 additional protocols. We know that under international humanitarian law, attacks, harassment, intimidation, and arbitrary detention of humanitarian personnel, as well as the destruction and misappropriation and looting of relief objects, are prohibited. Yet in the contributions we have heard from our colleagues, it is sad that these things continue to this day. Australia made a voluntary pledge to report on domestic implementation of international humanitarian law. Its most recent report was published in October of last year. The Speaker of the Australian Parliament, the Honourable Milton Dick, has made a number of contributions in this gathering here of the 151st gathering of the IPU, indicating Australia's leadership through Senator Wong, our Foreign Minister, in making sure that we move to a landmark declaration for the protection of humanitarian personnel focused on practical steps to protect workers in conflict zones. Surely we can all agree that those who go to help, those who are in times of dire need, will receive the support that they need. In the Asia-Pacific region, Australia, in solidarity with our Asian brothers and sister nations, are investing in everything that we can do to ensure humanitarian action is provided. Australia is now one of the largest donors to the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, which is a major threat to stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Australia is providing life-saving assistance to displaced and conflict-affected people across Myanmar and to the Rohingyas and their host communities in Bangladesh. We have also committed over $1.25 billion. And if I can close, Mr. Speaker and President of this Assembly today, to note that the gap between the need and funding is widening. In 2024, the UN appealed for $5 billion and only received 45% of it. Given our discussions about humanitarian need, I urge all countries to make as much of a contribution as is possible. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Australia. Our next speaker is the Republic of Korea. Korea, you have the floor.
I'm great honor to be here with outstanding delegation from all over the world. I'm going to read my message in Korean from now on. 존경하는 각국 대표단 여러분 안녕하십니까? 대한민국 대표단의 황희입니다. 지금 인류 사회는 대전환의 시점을 맞이하고 있습니다. AI가 이끄는 4차 산업혁명의 기술 시대는 인류 사회의 생산성을 비약적으로 성장시키며 그 정도를 가늠할 수 없는 수준의 도약을 예고하고 있습니다. 회속으로 질주하는 기술 발전의 양상은 인류 사회의 기준과 질서가 자리 잡기 어려울 정도로 급변의 시대를 이어가고 있습니다. 탈진실과 정치적 사회적 양극화는 불신과 불평등을 조장하며 대립과 갈등의 극단적 대결 구도를 형성하고 있습니다. 기술의 비약적 발전과 사회적 양극화는 국제사회의 불확실성을 높이며 패권 구도의 재구성을 예고하고 있습니다. 본격적인 다자 갈등과 각자 도생의 시대가 되었습니다. 국제사회가 합의한 질서가 파괴되고 환경오염으로 인한 기후변화가 인류 생존을 위험하고 있습니다. 전쟁과 테러, 마약과 폭력으로 수많은 사람들이 공포에 시달리고 있습니다. 배타적 자원과 환경적 가치는 경제적 무기와 패권의 수단이 되고 있습니다. 인류 문명은 풍요와 번영을 이루고 있는데 그만큼의 갈등과 대립도 양산되고 있는 것입니다. 다가올 4차 산업혁명의 기술도약의 시대는 기존의 산업혁명들과는 차원이 다른 효율적 생산수단과 높은 생산성을 예고하고 있습니다. 지금까지 인류의 전례를 비춰볼 때 4차 산업혁명의 성과는 어쩌면 더 큰 갈등과 대립을 불러올 수도 있습니다. 국제사회의 협력적 노력이 절실한 시점입니다. IPU를 중심으로 보다 적극적인 국가 간 문화교류 협력의 추진을 제안합니다. 문화는 한 국가 공동체가 오랜 기간 공유하고 축적해온 가치관의 총합입니다. 그래서 문화의 교류는 세계 시민의 가치관의 연대로 이어질 수 있습니다. 각국은 자국의 문화 정책을 활성화시키고 국가 간 문화 교류에 적극 나서야 합니다. 문화 교류는 세계 시민의 공감대를 높이고 연대를 강화하게 될 것입니다. 인류가 곧 맞이하게 될지도 모를 거대한 대립과 갈등의 시간을 문화 교류를 통한 화해와 협력 그리고 연대의 시간으로 돌려놓아야 합니다. 시민의 행복과 권리를 대변하는 의회가 할 수 있습니다. IPU가 그 책임을 다해야 합니다. 구체적 프로그램으로 IPU가 IOC가 협업하고 주도하는 문화올림픽을 제안합니다. 세계 시민이 참여하고 공감하는 연대하는 가운데 평화를 지향하는 것이 올림픽의 기본 정신입니다. 다른 나라를 단 한 번도 침략하지 않으면서 자국의 문화를 세계 곳곳에 알린 세계사적으로 유일한 사례가 대한민국의 한류입니다. 대한민국은 문화를 통해 세계 시민이 공감과 연대, 평화와 협력의 가치를 만들 수 있음을 입증하고 있습니다. 주권자의 권리와 행복을 대변하는 각국 의회가 적극적으로 나서야 합니다. IPU만이 할 수 있습니다. 경청해 주셔서 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, my brother. And our next speaker is from Bahamas. Bahamas, you have the floor.
Thank you. Chair, Excellencies, the Bahamas is honored to participate in this debate, which strikes at the conscience of our shared humanity. As conflicts multiply and humanitarian needs reach record levels, the call to uphold the norms that protect human dignity has never been more urgent. Civilians today bear the cost of a record number of armed conflicts, with over 123 million people forcibly displaced, according to the 2025 UN Global Humanitarian Overview. Even hospitals and relief workers are under attack. The Geneva Conventions, born from the ashes of World War, were meant to draw a moral line in the sand, yet that line is being blurred before our eyes. For the Bahamas and other small island development states, the need for humanitarianism extends beyond conflict. Climate change is, for us, the violence of intensifying hurricanes, rising seas, and economic shocks that threaten lives and livelihoods. It deprives people of food, water, and shelter, displaces communities, and deepens inequality. To speak of humanitarian action today, we must necessarily confront the climate emergency and its humanitarian consequences. In Haiti, our Caribbean neighbor, we witness the tragic convergence of security and humanitarian cases. As a member of CARICOM, the Bahamas stands in solidarity with Haiti and supports regional and international efforts to restore peace and stability. We welcome Security Council Resolution 2793, transitioning the multinational security support mission into a gang suppression force with a more robust UN-authorized mandate. And we urge sustained contributions to the UN Trust Fund. The Haitian crisis is more than a regional security challenge. It's a test of our collective humanity. As parliamentarians, we must remind the world that humanitarian action begins with political will. The choice to fund relief rather than fuel war, to uphold law rather than weaken it, and to defend human dignity, including in times of crisis. In the Bahamas, we've taken concrete steps to strengthen our human rights, humanitarian and resilience frameworks. In March of this year, the Bahamas established the first parliamentary human rights committee, ensuring oversight of rights protection and alignment with international standards, including in emergencies. We've also established the Disaster Risk Management Authority through comprehensive legislation providing for comprehensive mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery, including the development of national humanitarian assistance standards. Our National Youth Guard is also training young Bahamians to assist in disaster preparedness and relief. Internationally, the Bahamas also contributes within our capacity to the International Committee of the Red Cross, reaffirming our commitment to global humanitarian principles and action. Excellencies, effective international humanitarian action requires cooperation. However, the international community is facing a crisis of multilateralism, a crisis of trust. The social contract of global cooperation, built on solidarity, fairness, and shared responsibility, must be renewed. This renewal calls for a reinvigorated multilateralism where global systems deliver not only for the powerful, but also for the vulnerable. Let us therefore reaffirm our collective resolve to protect the integrity of international humanitarian law, to champion inclusive, people-centered policies for women, children, and persons in vulnerable situations, to advance climate justice as a humanitarian imperative, and to strengthen parliamentary diplomacy as a bridge of solidarity. Excellencies, the task before us is moral as it is political. We must rekindle multilateralism as a shared social contract grounded in human rights, justice, and respect for humanitarian norms, to translate principles into life-saving action that restores hope and dignity to those most in need. Allow me to end by paying tribute to humanitarian workers around the world, from those in conflict zones to those supporting hurricane-stricken islands. For their courage, compassion, and selfless service, we say thank you. Let us work collectively to protect their capacity to carry out this vital work safely and with dignity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Bahamas. And our next speaker is from France. France, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les parlementaires, chers amis, malgré les leçons de l'histoire et des obligations juridiques claires, nous assistons à un effondrement de la protection des civils dans les conflits armés et du respect du droit international humanitaire. Je reprends ici les mots de Thomas Fletcher, secrétaire général adjoint de l'ONU aux affaires humanitaires, devant le Conseil de sécurité du 22 mai 2025. En 2024, l'ONU a recensé plus de 36 000 morts civiles dans le cadre de 14 conflits armés, pour un bilan réel, probablement hélas bien plus élevé. Les attaques portant atteinte aux infrastructures civiles sont toujours plus nombreuses, perturbant l'approvisionnement en électricité et en eau, perturbant l'éducation et les moyens de subsistance des populations locales qui se trouvent privées des ressources essentielles pour survivre. Les signalements de disparitions forcées, d'actes de torture, de traitements inhumains et d'autres traumatismes se sont multipliés. La violence des conflits n'épargne personne, pas même celles et ceux qui répondent aux besoins des populations sur le terrain. Alors, chers collègues, je voudrais rappeler deux des principes qui soutiennent le droit international humanitaire, en particulier le principe de distinction. Les attaques, si attaque il y a, doivent avoir uniquement des objectifs militaires, jamais les civils ou les infrastructures civiles. Ensuite, le principe d'humanité. Il faut protéger les personnes qui ne participent pas aux hostilités, les blessés, les malades, les prisonniers et les civils. Ceci étant rappelé, en tant que députée française, je voulais dire quelques mots sur les engagements humanitaires français. La France appelle à une application stricte du droit international humanitaire pour garantir la protection des civils en situation de conflit armé. Pour garantir, enfin, l'aide humanitaire française devrait mobiliser 500 millions d'euros en 2025 pour la population civile palestinienne en Ukraine, en Syrie, en Afghanistan, au Soudan, à Haïti. Il est essentiel de soutenir les acteurs humanitaires tels que les ONG, les organisations internationales, qui plus est profondément fragilisées par la suppression de l'aide internationale américaine. En tant que membre de la Commission des finances en France, et alors qu'en fin d'année, nous sommes tous appelés dans nos pays à nous prononcer sur nos budgets nationaux pour 2026, je voudrais partager mes travaux en cours sur les moyens budgétaires accordés à la diplomatie. La tendance à voir grossir les budgets militaires du fait des nouvelles menaces qui nous entourent et pour notre sécurité collective doit se doubler de moyens à la hauteur pour notre action diplomatique humanitaire, moyens que les démocraties devraient considérer comme prioritaires. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, France. Our next speaker is IPNED, the International Parliamentary Network for Education. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to take the floor today for the International Parliamentary Network for Education to contribute to this vitally important debate. As we've heard throughout the debate over the last few days, we face the perfect storm of a massive upsurge in emergencies, armed violence, forced displacement, climate change, pandemics, and food insecurity, with the collapse of the systems and the practices which underpin international solidarity. This isn't so much a perfect storm as a toxic cocktail that is causing untold suffering and costing lives. As we've heard, the numbers are staggering. As we meet here in Geneva, 122 million people are forcibly displaced, and almost 310 are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. And as is so often the case, the most vulnerable are the most hardest hit. Did you know that 1 in every 5 children in the world are living in or fleeing conflict zones? Children caught up in crises often face the double jeopardy of losing their homes and their education. And sadly, education is often the poor cousin of an overstretched and underfunded humanitarian system. As a result, 234 million children are crisis affected and need urgent support, and 85 million of them are out of school. Depriving children in these conflicts of an education robs them not just of the opportunity to build skills, but also of a platform to receive life-saving support like food, water, and basic health care. However, the drastic cuts that we are seeing to development and humanitarian assistance are forcing many of the efforts to get those school children back into school to close. We're going to lose $3.2 billion between now and the end of the year of education funding for humanitarian assistance. And as you might have heard, UNHCR, the UN's refugee agency, has only received a quarter of what they need to provide support to refugees around the world. As a result, refugees, children in camps that host Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, just by way of example, 500,000 of them now are left without any form of schooling. As you also know, the vast majority of refugees around the world are hosted in low and middle income countries whose education systems are often struggling to provide an education to their very own children. So in such cases, it's evident that host countries need support from the international community to provide the refugees they're hosting with access to education. Tragically, a lack of funding isn't the only issue that we face, and once again, education proves the point. In 2022-2023, there were 6,000 reports of attacks on education, and that represents a 20% increase on the previous 2 years. But for all of these issues, there is another way, and I would urge parliamentarians to take it, to reinforce humanitarian norms, and above all, to support humanitarian action. As the representatives of the people, we owe it to the people we represent all around the world to take up this fight and build new people-people relationships that do precisely that.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker comes from Netherlands. Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, dear colleagues. On behalf of the Netherlands delegation, it's a great honor to address you on the important theme of building a fair and sustainable global economy. The Netherlands is famous for its agricultural production, tulips, milk, cheese. I live in Andijk, which is in the middle of Seed Valley. Over 50% of world's vegetable seeds is produced there. In the Netherlands, in 1925, lived 7.3 million people. Nowadays, almost 18 million. The world population is growing. Climate change affects the most vulnerable, but so does hunger. I was inspired by 2 workshops in this assembly, breaking the hunger cycle and reducing methane for climate. I thought, which one is more important? However, the relationship between achieving enough food and climate goals is not just a matter of priorities, but one of simultaneous achievement. The aim is to achieve sustainable development by minimizing negative environmental impact and ensure the world population can be fed. Methane is a greenhouse gas, stronger than carbon dioxide. Nearly half of global methane emissions come from agricultural activities such as livestock and rice farming. Since global food demand is rising, those emissions tend to rise also. We need to adopt an integral approach to climate measures, such as changes to housing, feed or genetics, to prevent negative effects on food production. This includes win-win measures that simultaneously contribute to our climate and improve food security. For example, enhancing cow health to extend their lifespan, which reduces the carbon footprint and improves the quality. The goal is not to choose, but to work on food and climate at the same time. This includes monitoring technical solutions and economies of scale, and will only work with a level playing field. We need your commitment on both goals to ensure that progress in only one field does not come at the expense of the most vulnerable. So, IPU members, I call on you to join us to help prevent future humanitarian crises. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Netherlands. Our next speaker is from Mexico. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Honorable Asamblea. El cumplimiento de las normas humanitarias requiere de parlamentos activos, de gobiernos responsables y de comunidades internacionales solidarias. Apoyar la acción humanitaria es una prioridad para mi país, es una prioridad para México. Desde el Parlamento mexicano, legislamos para asegurar que el derecho internacional humanitario sea plenamente incorporado a nuestro marco jurídico nacional. Vigilamos que el Estado cumpla con sus compromisos internacionales. Eso es, ejercer el control sobre los gobiernos, sobre el poder ejecutivo. Asignamos también recursos presupuestales adecuados y promovemos la cooperación parlamentaria internacional para fortalecer la respuesta global ante las crisis humanitarias. A México le preocupa profundamente la situación de las personas migrantes, de las personas desplazadas forzosas, de refugiados, cuya vulnerabilidad aumenta día con día y en el mundo. Recordemos que existen más de 120 millones de personas desplazadas por la fuerza. Y si sumamos a quienes migran por causa de violencia extrema, de pobreza, de desastres ambientales, la cifra es aún mayor, es una cifra alarmante. Estas personas, especialmente niñas y niños, adolescentes no acompañados, enfrentan riesgos extremos de explotación, trata de personas, reclutamiento forzado por parte del crimen organizado, incluso de terroristas, de violencia sexual y la constante amenaza a su vida, a su integridad, y la falta de protección, por supuesto, y las políticas restrictivas de algunos países agravan su sufrimiento y los empujan a buscar rutas cada vez más peligrosas. Por ello, México reitera la urgencia de respuestas humanitarias coordinadas, basadas en derechos humanos y basadas en la cooperación internacional y la solidaridad entre los pueblos. Los parlamentos tenemos un papel esencial para garantizar leyes nacionales que reflejen las normas internacionales. Y México hoy hace un llamado a que esta asamblea, sí, esta asamblea incluya explícitamente en sus declaraciones y deliberaciones la protección a las personas migrantes y desplazadas por violencia y por terrorismo como parte de las prioridades humanitarias globales. México reitera su compromiso con una acción humanitaria basada en la dignidad y en la solidaridad. Muchas gracias. Es cuanto.
Thank you very much, Mexico. And our next speaker is from Nigeria. Nigeria, you have the floor.
Honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I bring warm greetings from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the President of the Nigerian Senate, Godswill Akpabio. We thank the IPU and our hosts here in Geneva for providing this platform where legislators from all regions can speak with one voice in defense of humanity. Our meeting comes at a time when the world faces multiple and overlapping humanitarian crises. Across Africa, we have seen the conflict in Sudan drive millions from their homes, and in the Sahel, violence and desertification continue to deepen food insecurity. In other parts, we see how what could appear as ethnic persecution or cleansing is often driven by fierce competition over vast mineral resources. And beyond Africa, the tragedies in Gaza and Ukraine remind us of the heavy toll of war. Through all this, the IPU has shown that parliaments can make a difference. Partnerships such as the IPU and WHO partnership has strengthened the capacity of legislators worldwide to respond to health and humanitarian emergencies. The Committee on Human Rights has stood beside hundreds of parliamentarians at risk, and the recent call for action on the Sudan crisis has drawn vital attention to the suffering of more than 8 million displaced persons. These are concrete results that show what cooperation and political will can achieve. In Nigeria, our parliaments continue to strengthen laws and institutions that protect vulnerable citizens. The Northeast Development Commission, the Presidential Amnesty Program, and the Niger Delta Development Commission, where I serve as chairman of the Senate Oversight Committee, have all made significant interventions in crisis-affected communities across Nigeria. The National Assembly is also addressing the farmer-herder conflict, which has displaced thousands and threatened food security in parts of our country. Through dialogue, community peace building, and the implementation of new grazing and land use policies, we are working to transform these long-standing challenges into an opportunity for coexistence and rural development. Finally, let me stress that Nigerians' humanitarian concerns are complex, but they are not rooted in any pattern of religious persecution. Our Constitution and our conscience compels us to protect every citizen equally, regardless of faith or background. Simplifying these challenges into sectarian narrative risks undermining the real work of peace building. Once again, I deeply appreciate the great work the IPU is doing and believe above all we have set a template for parliamentary democracy and a more peaceful world. I wish us all peaceful deliberations. Thank you, and may God bless us all.
Nigeria, thank you very much. And our next speaker is from Ireland. Ireland, you have the floor.
Chair, distinguished colleagues, the Eve is more on an ordum a bhean. It is indeed an honour to stand before you. Across our world today, conflict and displacement are tearing at the fabric of humanity. Millions are uprooted, millions go hungry, and too many have lost faith that the world still sees them. At this moment, it has never been more urgent to uphold the humanitarian norms, to stand up collectively for our shared humanity. Ireland is proud to be a steadfast and principled voice for humanitarian action. We are not the largest donor, but we are a consistent one and a committed one. As you may know, Ireland is a land of saints and scholars. Historically, religious missionaries, starting with Christian monks like St. Patrick and Columbanus, founded monasteries right across Europe, which later developed into the modern Catholic missionary movements in the 20th century that focused on establishing schools and hospitals abroad. In 2024, Ireland provided $310 million in humanitarian aid, and we will maintain that level in 2025. Our funding is flexible, predictable, and principled, designed to meet urgent and evolving needs. Reducing humanitarian suffering is at the heart of Ireland's foreign policy. Our efforts focus on the world's most severe crises in Sudan, Ukraine, Yemen, Myanmar, Afghanistan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And yes, Chair, in Gaza, where the Irish government has been unwavering in its support for the Palestinian people and its call for an immediate ceasefire, humanitarian access, and a just and lasting peace. But colleagues, let us speak plainly. The humanitarian system is under unbearable strain. Conflicts are more entrenched and brutal than at any point in recent memory. Civilians, our mothers, our fathers, and our children are paying the highest price. The deliberate targeting of civilian infrastructure, the use of explosive weapons in our towns and cities, these are acts that defy international law and defy our shared moral duty. Ireland will continue to act, to stand with those in need, to speak out where others fall silent, and to insist that compassion and justice must guide our response to human suffering. Let us leave this assembly not just with words, but with a renewed resolve to make humanity once again the heart of international politics. Thank you, delegates.
Thank you very much, Ireland. And our next speaker is from Armenia. Armenia, you have the floor.
Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues. When we speak today about upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crisis, we are reminded that these principles are not only about responding to emergencies. They are about protecting the very essence of what makes us human: compassion, dignity, and peace. I come from Armenia, a nation that knows too well the pain of conflict and displacement, but also the strength of resilience and the power of hope. For decades, our region has witnessed war, loss, and suffering. Generations have grown up knowing fear instead of trust, separation instead of cooperation. Yet today, Armenia has chosen a different path, the path of peace. We are committed to building a future of reconciliation and coexistence with our neighbor, Azerbaijan. This is not an easy path. It demands courage to overcome the wounds and the past and faith that dialogue can replace division. But it is the only path that truly honors humanitarian values. Because peace itself is the highest form of humanitarian action, it prevents crises before they happen. It heals communities before they break, and it allows children to dream of something greater than survival. Dear colleagues, in times of crisis, the world often looks to humanitarian actors to bring relief. But let us also remember our duty, as parliamentarians, to prevent those crises, to ensure that the principles of humanity, impartiality, and solidarity guide not only aid workers in the field, but policymakers in our chambers. Armenia stands ready to work with all nations to transform our shared pain into shared progress. We believe that peace is possible when it is built on respect for human rights, recognition of suffering, and sincere commitment of justice. Let this assembly to be a reminder that humanitarian norms do not end where borders begin. They are universal. They belong to all people in every crisis, in every land. May our collective voice today be a voice for peace, for dignity, and for the belief that every even after the darkest storm, humanity can still choose the light. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Armenia. And our next speaker is from Montenegro. Montenegro, you have the floor.
Distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, today, as conflicts multiply and geopolitical tensions deepen, our world faces an undeniable truth. Smaller and developing states are not just bystanders. They are frontline actors in the struggle for peace, democracy, and human dignity. As a representative of Montenegro, a small state committed to democracy, stability, and European values, I know that the strength of a nation is not measured by size, but by its dedication to dialogue and the rule of law. We live in an era defined by uncertainty, shifting global alliances, economic challenges, climate emergencies, and humanitarian crises affecting over 300 million people worldwide. In this complex environment, the strength of democracy is tasted by parliaments, and parliaments play a decisive role in how nations respond. For smaller states in particular, democratization is not a luxury, it's a survival. Strong, transparent parliaments safeguard sovereignty, prevent corruption, and ensure that humanitarian and development aid truly reach those in need. They are the institutions that gave legitimacy to governments and stability to nations. Yet global politics today often tilts toward power rather than principle. The rise of multipolar competition risks sidelining smaller nations and weakening multilateral cooperation. That is why gatherings like the IPU matters. Because they reaffirm that every nation, regardless of size and wealth, have a voice and responsibility in shaping global norms. Colleagues, the path toward democracy and peace is not measured by power, but by principle. Smaller states may lack size, but not significance. When they build resilient democratic institutions, they became anchors of stability in a turbulent world. Let us therefore reaffirm our shared duty to protect humanitarian norms, to defend democracy everywhere, and to ensure that in this changing world, every nation stands with equal dignity, equal responsibility, and equal voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is from Portugal. But maybe before Portugal takes the podium, I want to say thank you very much. It has been good to work with you, and you have been good to me. And it is my humble request and plea that you continue to be good to my sister from Turkey, and the leader of the delegation. Thank you very much. Portugal, you have the floor.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente. Thank you. Sr. Presidente, distintos colegas parlamentares, excelências. Vivemos um tempo em que as crises se multiplicam, conflitos, desastres climáticos, deslocações forçadas e desigualdades crescentes. Cada uma delas põe à prova não apenas as nossas políticas, mas a própria humanidade que partilhamos. Perante isto, reafirmar o valor do multilateralismo é essencial. Só através da cooperação entre nações poderemos enfrentar desafios comuns da paz e segurança à preservação do clima, do acesso a bens essenciais, ao desenvolvimento sustentável. Mas o multilateralismo só resiste se assentar naquilo que mais falta faz ao mundo de hoje, a confiança entre os povos. Esse bem precioso tem-se perdido e temos de o reconquistar. Uma das formas mais simples é aproveitar esta união interparlamentar para promover encontros bilaterais sinceros, até forçados, com simpatia, se me permitem a ousadia, que nos levem a olharmos-nos, a conhecermos-nos, a escutarmos-nos e, no fim, talvez, a compreendermos-nos melhor. Por que não? Só assim se constrói confiança, e sem confiança não há multilateralismo que resista. Mas a paz e a confiança que a sustenta não se mantém sem uma adesão firme à ação humanitária. Nenhum conflito, ideologia ou interesse nacional justifica o desrespeito pela dignidade humana. O direito internacional humanitário deve ser respeitado sempre. Quando hospitais são atacados ou trabalhadores humanitários impedidos de agir, não é apenas a lei que é violada, é a própria noção de humanidade que é posta em causa. A sua violação significa aceitar que há vidas que valem menos do que as outras, que o ser humano mais fraco pode ser desprezado ou eliminado. Um caminho à barbárie e à autocracia. E quando essa ideia se instala, todos perdemos. Os parlamentos têm um papel essencial: transformar compromissos em políticas, fiscalizar os governos e garantir os meios para que a ajuda chegue a quem dela precisa. E é através da diplomacia parlamentar, que esta União tão bem representa, que podemos fortalecer as instituições internacionais e aproximar os povos em torno de valores comuns: desenvolvimento, direitos humanos e respeito pelo direito humanitário. Excelências, cabe-nos ser, mesmo nos momentos mais sombrios, a voz persistente da humanidade e tirar da história as lições necessárias. Porque a força de um Parlamento e de uma nação mede-se não pelo poder que exerce, mas pela capacidade de proteger quem mais precisa. Muito obrigado.
Now, the speaker from New Zealand, please.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Rachel Brooking and I am from the Labour Party in New Zealand, but I am giving this speech on behalf of my colleague Stuart Smith, who is from the National Party. So we are at opposite ends of the political spectrum, but agree on this issue. He has had to return to New Zealand because there are fires in his electorate. And this is the point, that New Zealand are no strangers to adversity. We have a lot of perils. From the devastating Canterbury earthquakes in 2010 and 2011 to the Kaikoura quake, where Stuart is from, in 2016, and more recently, the destruction wrought by Cyclone Gabriel in 2023. Our communities have faced immense challenges, and each time Parliament has stood up and responded. Following Cyclone Gabriel, we passed the Severe Weather Emergency Recovery Legislation Act. This was not just a piece of legislation, it was a lifeline. It gave our local authorities the tools they needed to act swiftly, to rebuild and to support their communities. It followed the precedent set by previous governments in response to the Canterbury and Kaikoura earthquakes. These laws are proof that when disaster strikes, Parliament of different striped governments can act decisively and responsibly, and then Parliament can undertake a post-enactment review. But recovery is not just about bricks and mortar, it is about people. It's about the welfare of those who have lost homes, livelihoods and loved ones, and successive governments have recognised this. Colleagues, Stuart and I are proud of the role Parliament has played in supporting New Zealanders through these difficult times. It is incumbent on parliamentarians to continue to work together to ensure that when the next challenge comes, and it will, we are ready to meet with it with strength, unity and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I call Paraguay.
Distinguida Presidenta en ejercicio, distinguidas colegas parlamentarias y parlamentarios de todo el mundo, muy buenos días. Represento a Paraguay, un país que ha conocido la tragedia de las guerras, en especial una que marcó nuestra historia, la Guerra de la Triple Alianza, que casi exterminó a nuestra nación. El 70% de nuestra nación, de nuestra población fue aniquilada, pero fueron las mujeres paraguayas quienes la reconstruyeron desde las cenizas. Paraguay se sostuvo sobre hombros femeninos. Puedo afirmar con certeza que la nacionalidad paraguaya existe gracias a las mujeres. Hoy, Paraguay habla desde su resiliencia, desde una historia de paz conquistada con esfuerzo y desde su compromiso inquebrantable con la dignidad humana, el diálogo y el respeto al derecho internacional humanitario. Hemos ratificado las convenciones de Ginebra y todos sus protocolos adicionales. Lo hemos incorporado al ordenamiento jurídico nacional y obramos en consecuencia y asignamos presupuesto para el efecto. Hablo también como madre, como mujer y heredera de aquellas que reconstruyeron mi patria. Y alzo mi voz, pero no solo la mía, sino la de quienes más sufren en las crisis, las mujeres, niñas y niños, que representan el 70% de las víctimas humanitarias globales. El mundo no atraviesa una mera complejidad, atraviesa una crisis moral. Los 120 conflictos armados que existen no son cifras vacías, son hospitales bombardeados, escuelas destruidas, mujeres violadas, niños robados, adoptados ilegalmente. No hablemos de adopciones internacionales ilegales o irregulares, llamémosles por su nombre. Son crímenes, trata de personas, es tráfico de niños. Frente a esta realidad, nuestra respuesta debe ser firme, pero profundamente humana. Las normas humanitarias no son simples textos jurídicos, son el último muro de defensa y de contención. Respetarlas es proteger la esencia misma de la humanidad. Debemos recordar que la acción humanitaria no es caridad, es justicia, y la justicia solo existe cuando es igualdad y cuando la igualdad es real. Como parlamentarios no podemos ser testigos mudos, meros observadores o espectadores. Nuestra obligación es triple: legislar con urgencia, fiscalizar sin tregua y cooperar globalmente. Los parlamentos debemos transformar el derecho internacional humanitario en leyes nacionales efectivas y garantizar que la ayuda humanitaria no quede atrapada por intereses políticos y económicos. Asimismo, Paraguay reafirma su compromiso con la no intervención y las soluciones pacíficas. En ese marco, abogamos por un diálogo constructivo entre la República Popular de China y la República de China-Taiwán. Y creemos que Taiwán debe participar en los foros internacionales. Los 23 millones de seres humanos que habitan en Taiwán también tienen derecho a estar protegidos. Colegas, hagamos que esta asamblea se recuerde no por discursos vacíos, sino por salvar vidas, que la humanidad vuelva a ser el centro de la política. Porque en cada vida protegida, en cada niña o niño que vuelva a jugar, estaremos honrando el verdadero propósito de esta unión interparlamentaria. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Now, Mauritania, you have the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. شكرا سيدة الرئيسة. سيداتي وسادتي، السادة أصحاب السعادة في أعضاء البرلمان الدولي، يسعدني أن أشارك معكم اليوم في هذه الدورة التي جعلت من تعزيز وتمكين القانون الدولي الإنساني ورفع قيم السلام والأمن شعاراً لها في ظل معاناة العالم من العنف المتصاعد والصراعات المتعددة التي تناهز 120 صراعاً حول العالم، جعلت أكثر من 300 مليون إنسان بحاجة إلى المساعدة. أيها الجمع الكريم، إن تصاعد موجات العنف يهدد أمننا جميعا، والصمت تجاه الممارسات الوحشية التي يؤذي إنسانيتنا ويجرح ضمائرنا وينافي فطرتنا، وهو ما يستوجب علينا اتخاذ مواقف أكثر جدية وفاعلية وتأثيرا لمواجهة العنف وحماية حقوق المدنيين وتعزيز قيم العدل والسلم والأمن على صعيدين المحلي والدولي. أيها الجمع الكريم، أدعوكم جميعا اليوم لنجعل هذه الدورة نقطة تحول في تاريخنا، في تاريخ البرلمان الدولي، بحيث تصبح منصة فاعلة لتفعيل القانون الدولي الإنساني المعطل بفعل التواطؤ الدولي ونشر القوانين والآليات التي تنظم علاقاتنا الإنسانية الدولية. أيها البرلمانيون الكرام، إننا في موريتانيا وفي ظل سياسات فخامة الرئيس السيد محمد ولد الشيخ الغزواني ننتهج مقاربة إنسانية تعلي من قيم العدالة الاجتماعية، وأيضا في محيطنا الجيوسياسي. فمنذ تولي فخامته السلطة عمل على تفعيل جهاز حكومي باسم مفوضية حقوق الإنسان والعمل الإنساني وكذا اللجنة الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان، ليكونا جهازين للرقابة والتنفيذ لمقتضيات القوانين الدولية والمحلية في مجال حقوق الإنسان. وفي ظل الاضطرابات الحاصلة في منطقة الساحل، كان دورنا فاعلا ورصين ومستجيب لمقتضيات القانون الدولي الإنساني، فقد فتحت بلادنا موريتانيا أبوابها لتكون ملجأ لضحايا الحروب والمهاجرين الفارين من ويلات النزاعات في بعض البلدان المجاورة، فاحتضنت قرابة نصف مليون لاجئ، كما عملت على إنقاذ آلاف المهاجرين السريين من الموت المحقق في المحيط، ووفرت لهم السكن والمأوى. أيها الجمع الكريم، لقد تابع العالم على مدى عامين كاملين واحدة من أبشع الجرائم في التاريخ الحديث، جريمة تصفية الشعب بأكمله في رقعة ضيقة في غزة، وبكل أنواع الأسلحة المحرمة دوليا، من قصف همجي ومن تجويع وتدمير للمستشفيات والمدارس والمساجد والكنائس، وحرق للأراضي وانتهاك لأعراض وأعراف وقتل الرضع والجرحى والمرضى. أيها الجمع الكريم، إنما اقترفه الكيان الصهيوني في حق ضمير الإنسانية جريمة نكراء لا يجب أن تمر دون محاسبة دولية ومتابعة للمجرمين ومحاصرتهم سياسيا واقتصاديا. أيها الحضور الكريم، إن دولة إسرائيل برهنت على أنها كيان شفوني مارق مرد على الاعتداء على جيرانه في فلسطين ولبنان وسوريا، وتجاوز حدوده لتطال دولا أخرى في منطقة كدولة قطر الشقيقة، فكتب بذلك فصلا جديدا من الطغيان والتغول يفرض على العالم أن يتخذ إجراءات تضمن عدم تكراره، فالتنديد وحده لا يكفي، فالتهاون في العقوبة يهون من فداحة الجريمة، بل ينبغي أن يتم ضغط دولي حتى هذه اللحظة حتى تتحقق العدالة الدولية. أيها البرلمانيون، إن غزة اليوم هي مجرد ركام، لا بيت يأوي ولا ظل يستظل به، ولا مدارس ولا مستشفيات ولا طرق. لقد عبث يد الحرب الآثمة بكل مقومات الحياة فيها، وإن محو تلك الآثار لن يكون أمرا سهلا، بل يتطلب جهودا كبيرة وتعاونا عالميا حقيقيا. لذلك يجب المطالبة بإنشاء صندوق عالمي لإعمار غزة وفلسطين يتيح للشعوب العالم المتعاطفة مساهمة في إعادة البناء ودعم الصمود. إن التعاطف العالمي وحده لا يكفي. وفي الختام تقبلوا تحياتي والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Niger. Yes.
Madame la Présidente de l'UIP, Mesdames et Messieurs les Présidents des Parlements membres de l'UIP, distingués participants, je voudrais avant toute chose remercier cette 151e Assemblée de notre organisation commune, l'UIP, pour avoir réintégré notre pays, le Niger, dans la grande famille de l'Union interparlementaire. Je voudrais aussi réaffirmer la disponibilité du Conseil consultatif de la refondation d'œuvrer aux côtés des autres parlements pour la paix, la sécurité et la stabilité du monde. Madame la Présidente, le thème de la 151e Assemblée de l'UIP, à savoir veiller au respect des normes et soutenir l'action humanitaire en période de crise, prouve à suffisance l'importance que nos parlements accordent à l'action humanitaire. Madame la Présidente, l'action humanitaire, les condamnations des injustices dans le monde et des crimes ne doivent avoir ni couleur, ni géographie, ni géopolitique et doivent être universelles, mais dans le respect et la considération des peuples et de leurs choix politiques, autrement dit, sans ingérence dans les affaires intérieures des pays. Madame la Présidente, distingués participants, je dois vous rappeler la crise humanitaire au Sahel, particulièrement dans la Confédération de l'Alliance des États du Sahel, AES, dont le Niger fait partie avec le Mali et le Burkina Faso. Dans cette partie du Sahel sévit un terrorisme, une guerre par procuration entretenue par certaines puissances occidentales pour déstabiliser nos États et semer le chaos. Cette guerre fait beaucoup de victimes civiles, des déplacés, des écoles et des centres de santé qui se ferment. Et cette guerre sape tous les efforts de développement consentis par nos pays. Madame la Présidente, chers parlementaires, Mesdames et Messieurs, la paix et la stabilité mondiale ne doivent pas être un luxe. Les pays de l'AES, notamment le Niger, estiment que le terrorisme est une source de déstabilisation, de migration, de crise humanitaire. C'est pourquoi ils urgent de résorber ces crises humanitaires, d'arrêter le financement, l'équipement, la formation des terroristes et l'ingérence politique dans nos pays afin d'accélérer notre développement. Nous appelons à une gestion transparente des ressources destinées à l'action humanitaire et surtout à plus d'investissements dans les zones propices au terrorisme pour un développement juste et équilibré. Les pays membres de l'Alliance des États du Sahel lancent un appel vibrant auprès des gouvernements respectifs et des investisseurs pour une collaboration franche et un soutien marqué à nos efforts en faveur de la paix et de la sécurité. Vive l'action humanitaire franche, vive l'UIP. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you. Now we are moving to list D, young parliamentarians. I call Tunisia.
السيدة الرئيسة، الزميلات والزملاء أعضاء البرلمانات، أتحدث إليكم اليوم كبرلمانية شابة من تونس، من بلد آمن بالديمقراطية وبقيم الحرية والمساواة، ومن جيل جديد من البرلمانيين المؤمنين بأن صوتهم قادر على أن يصنع الفرق، خاصة حين يتعلق الأمر بالكرامة الإنسانية وبحماية الإنسان في زمن الأزمات. يشرفني أن أشارك هذا النقاش حول موضوع يمس جوهر إنسانيتنا جميعاً: الالتزام بالمعايير الإنسانية ودعم العمل الإنساني في أوقات الأزمات. وسأتحدث من زاوية أعتبرها محورية، زاوية النوع الاجتماعي ودور النساء البرلمانيات في الدفاع عن القيم الإنسانية أينما كنا ومهما كانت الظروف. إن الحديث عن الالتزام بالمعايير الإنسانية يعني الدفاع عن الحق في الحياة، عن الكرامة، عن الأمن والعدالة، وهي مبادئ أكدها منذ 25 عاماً قرار مجلس الأمن رقم 1325 الذي جعل من حماية المرأة أثناء النزاعات ومشاركتها الفاعلة في مسارات السلم وإعادة الأعمار أولوية دولية. لكن هل احترمنا فعلاً هذا القرار الأممي؟ هل يليق بعالم يدعي الإنسانية أن يصمت اليوم أمام إبادة ممنهجة يرتكبها الكيان الصهيوني الغاصب والمجرم ضد النساء وأطفال غزة؟ تخيلوا معي تلك المرأة الفلسطينية التي تلد تحت القصف والتي تودع زوجها الخارجة يبحث عن رغيف خبز فتبقى خلفه جائعة خائفة محاصرة أمامها الدمار وخلفها أشلاء أحبتها. تلك المرأة التي تقصف وهي على طاولة الولادة. تلك الطفل الذي لا يجد حضنا ولا بيتا ولا وطنا وتخرج من تحت الأنقاض مغبرة الوجه مرفوعة الرأس تغسل دموعها بالصبر وتدفن أهلها بيديها ثم تواصل الحياة كأنها وطن كامل في جسد امرأة. فأين نحن من هذه الإنسانية؟ أين هو الضمير الدولي؟ وأين هو الالتزام الأخلاقي الذي يفترض أن يوحدنا كبشر قبل أن نكون برلمانيين؟ أنظر إليكم اليوم زميلاتي زملائي، وكل واحد فينا إنسانا قبل أن يكون نائب. منكم من هو أب، ومنكم من هي أم وأخ وأخت، فبأي وجه سنبرر صمتنا أمام هذه المآسي؟ وأي التزام سنعلم أبناءنا إن نحن اكتفينا بالمشاهدة؟ نحن كبرلمانيين وبرلمانيات لسنا متفرجين، بل نحن ضمير العالم حين يصمت الآخرون. صوت النساء اللواتي يطالبن بالحق والعدالة والكرامة. فلنحيي القرار 1325 بروحه الحقيقية، حماية المرأة وصون الإنسانية. وشكرا لكم.
Thank you very much. Now, France, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente, chers collègues, inonder la bande de Gaza d'aide humanitaire, ce sont les mots prononcés il y a quelques jours par le ministre français des Affaires étrangères, et il illustre l'ampleur colossale de la mission qui attend les organisations internationales. Fournir nourriture, soins, eau et services essentiels à une population civile épuisée, affamée. Le cessez-le-feu en cours doit permettre une augmentation significative des convois humanitaires, et chacun sait ici combien les besoins sont immenses. Mes pensées se tournent également vers la population civile ukrainienne. Je tiens à rappeler le soutien constant de la France depuis le premier jour de la guerre, et elle n'a pas commencé en février 2022. Les attaques visant les infrastructures éducatives, sanitaires et sociales, les déplacements massifs de population ont eu des conséquences dramatiques sur la sécurité, la santé, mais aussi sur l'avenir scolaire et psychologique de millions d'enfants. Selon le Bureau de la coordination des affaires humanitaires des Nations Unies, 12,7 millions de personnes, soit un Ukrainien sur 3, auront besoin d'aide humanitaire en 2025. Cela nous oblige. Chers collègues, l'intensification des conflits dans les zones urbaines densément peuplées, la prolifération des groupes armés non étatiques ou encore l'externalisation croissante des moyens de guerre génèrent des défis sans précédent pour l'application concrète du droit international humanitaire. Face à ces réalités, à l'augmentation vertigineuse du nombre de personnes en détresse, plus de 310 millions dans plus de 70 pays, soit presque l'équivalent d'une population des États-Unis. L'inaction n'est pas une option, d'autant plus dans un contexte de retrait américain qui fragilise l'ensemble de l'architecture humanitaire mondiale. Il est plus que jamais nécessaire de soutenir les humanitaires, l'ONG, agence de l'ONU, organisation internationale, aujourd'hui fragilisée par la disparition d'une aide importante financière de l'aide américaine. C'est en ce sens que la France, avec ses partenaires, se mobilise pleinement. Je souhaite ici évoquer l'initiative mondiale lancée en septembre 2024, en marge de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies par la France, le Brésil, l'Afrique du Sud, le Kazakhstan et le Comité international de la Croix-Rouge. Son objectif est clair, promouvoir le respect du droit international humanitaire. L'initiative ONU 80, lancée en mars 2025 pour réformer le système multilatéral, fixe 4 priorités claires afin de rendre l'aide plus rapide, plus flexible et plus efficace face à l'évolution des conflits. Restons attentifs au calendrier de cette réforme, dont les premières propositions seront présentées aux États membres d'ici la fin du mois. Restons mobilisés dans nos responsabilités parlementaires, au service de ceux qui souffrent, car une vérité demeure, brutale et universelle. Dans toutes les guerres, ce sont toujours les civils qui payent le prix le plus lourd. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Now, Uruguay, you have the floor.
Soy del sur y vengo del sur. Así iniciaba un discurso internacional
nuestro expresidente José Mujica, fallecido recientemente, haciendo referencia a ser parte de los millones de ciudadanos de nuestra América del Sur, donde se concentra una desigualdad enorme que solo logra que los pobres sean cada vez más pobres y los ricos cada vez más ricos, donde los jóvenes ven amenazado su presente y su futuro por falta de oportunidades. No creo en la meritocracia, creo en un Estado que genere igualdad de oportunidades, que quedar apartado del estudio y el trabajo no sea una puerta al narcotráfico, que no tener una proyección de vida por falta de empleo de calidad no sea un deterioro a la salud mental de los jóvenes de todo nuestro continente, pero también de todo el mundo. Nuestros jóvenes quieren y necesitan trabajo, trabajo de calidad para poder proyectar su vida y también tiempo libre para los afectos, para el ocio, para la cultura, para que el acceso a la cultura no sea un privilegio. Soy del sur y vengo del sur, arrancaba inicialmente, pero nada de lo que pasa en el mundo me es ajeno. Aquí hemos escuchado en los últimos días situaciones y acciones políticas que nos permiten tener una mirada global, donde el avance de la violencia recrude nuestras calles. En ese sentido, la responsabilidad como legisladores es enorme. Y no creo que ser legisladora joven de por sí mejore la calidad democrática de mi país ni de ninguno, sino que tendrá sentido si esa renovación generacional está cargada de contenido para poder cambiar realidades, para poder cambiar las condiciones de vida de nuestra gente, para que las mujeres tengan independencia económica, para que los jóvenes tengan trabajo, para que los trabajadores tengan empleo de calidad, para que se pueda trabajar nuestra tierra, para poder tener una mirada global y saber que nuestro rol como parlamentarios cambió, aunque sea este mundo, y lo hizo un poquito más justo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I call Ireland.
Accordia, it's more an honour dum lauert an seo aniu ar san na hÉireann. I am delighted to have the opportunity to speak as a young parliamentarian from Ireland today. The Irish Constitution contains a commitment to the rule of international law, and this is one of the core principles of Irish foreign policy. During our term as an elected member of the UN Security Council from 2021 to 2022, Ireland consistently called for compliance with international humanitarian law and accountability for IHL violations. The persistent problem for IHL is the frequent failure by some states to respect the existing rules. Unfortunately, there is a very concerning trend of seeking to interpret those rules so loosely that their intended protective effect is either severely reduced or nullified. Ireland is concerned by these trends and is firmly committed to the implementation of international humanitarian law and to efforts to strengthen compliance with it. Ireland would like to see the interpretation of IHL continue to adapt to react to new developments in armed conflict, including the use of drones and cyber attacks in conflict zones. We are seeking to strengthen and promote adherence to IHL within Ireland as well as abroad, and our National Committee on International Humanitarian Law has continued to meet regularly. The National Committee provides an effective means of promoting wider knowledge of IHL within the state system, and we are currently in the process of preparing its first voluntary national report on domestic implementation of IHL. As part of this exercise, in July 2023, Ireland published a national position paper on the application of international law to cyberspace.
We strongly feel that cyber operations will take place in the context of armed conflict must be regulated by international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law must grow to evolve to match developments in armed conflict, and we must ensure to have a robust legal structure in place to ensure justice after the fact and to act as a deterrent against future harm. In Ireland, we have had a successful peace process, which we believe can be another example to other regions in conflict. There is still much more to be done in terms of reconciliation, and we are striving to end partition in our country and to secure a united Ireland. But this can only be achieved peacefully, and that again shows the power of respectful dialogue. Let us use our voices for peace and justice and not be afraid to call out violations of international law and make sure that there is accountability for all who violate. Gur míle maith agus saoirse in Palestine.
Thank you very much. Now, Bulgaria, you have the floor.
Honorable President, distinguished colleagues, today, as we gather in Geneva, the city where the Geneva Conventions were born, we are reminded that humanitarian norms are not abstract principles. Across the world, over 120 armed conflicts are ongoing. More than 120 million people have been forcibly displaced, and 310 million need humanitarian assistance. Behind each number, there is a name, a loss, and a hope that the world will not look away. In a time of growing conflicts, polarization, and disinformation, strong political commitment to ensure respect for international humanitarian law is more necessary than ever. Bulgaria stands firmly by the conviction that respect for international humanitarian law is not optional. It is a moral and legal obligation. This year, we mark 70 years since the Geneva Conventions entered into force in Bulgaria. We remain fully committed to ensuring and overseeing their implementation through our National Committee on International Humanitarian Law. But rules and institutions alone are not enough. Humanitarian action begins with people and with empathy. Since 2023, Bulgaria has doubled its resettlement quota for forcibly displaced persons and made 9 new pledges under the Global Refugee Forum, focused on children, integration, and education. Additionally, the UNHCR Bulgaria has built a Compass network of protection and inclusion centers, which offer legal aid, education, and support, not only to refugees, but to local communities. We must continue working across all our countries to integrate displaced people and offer them a new sense of belonging. Dear colleagues, as representatives of the people, we as parliamentarians are uniquely positioned to mobilize political will, challenge narratives, and be the voice of the most vulnerable. Let's prove that even in times of division, humanity can still unite across one principle: that every life deserves protection and that those who violate this duty must be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Malta, you have the floor.
Dear Chair, colleagues and delegates, it is a great honor to speak before you today as the young parliamentarian representing Malta, led by our Speaker of the House of the Representatives, Angelo Farrugia, at this Inter-parliamentary Conference. In time of crisis, whether caused by war, forced migration, or natural disaster, protecting humanitarian values is not only a legal duty, but also a sign of shared humanity. These values, which guide international humanitarian law, remind us to always act with dignity, fairness, and compassion. Malta continues to stand firmly by these principles. Our foreign policy gives strong importance to humanitarian work through our official development assistance and humanitarian aid policy. This policy supports the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and focuses on solidarity, human rights, and protected civilian needs. Because of Malta's location in the Mediterranean, we are often at the center of migration and humanitarian challenges. To respond, our government works closely with international partners, such as the International Organization for Migration, UNHCR, and the Red Cross. Together, we help to provide shelter, mental health support, and integration programs for displaced people. Our Civil Protection Department also plays an important role in cooperation emergency response, both in Malta and as part of the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. Malta also believes that humanitarian action should go beyond emergency aid. It should include preparation, building community resilience, and supporting long-term recovery. We believe affected people should have a say in rebuilding their lives, and their cooperation between nations should be based on honesty, fairness, and respect for each country's independence. As parliamentarians, it is our duty to run humanitarian values into real laws and actions. Let this conference renew our shared commitment, not just in words, but through clear, practical steps that protect the vulnerable and uphold the dignity of every person. I thank you.
Thank you. Now, Nigeria, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, respected parliamentarians, I bring you warm greetings from the Federal Republic of Nigeria and extend my appreciation to the Inter-parliamentary Union for creating a platform where we can collectively advance humanitarian norms in the face of today's complex crisis. Our theme, upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crisis, is not distant or theoretical for us in Nigeria and across the world. Crises are not just events, they are ongoing realities, from armed conflict and insurgency to displacement caused by climate shocks and to the struggles of food insecurity are caught in cycles of vulnerability. In every crisis, whether in war zones, climate disasters, or mass displacement, it is young people who inherit the longest shadows of conflict and neglect. Yet, despite this, they are too often seen only as victims or passive observers. As a young legislator and the chairman of the House of Representatives in Nigeria on students' loan, we are working to ensure that students from crisis-ridden regions receive special attention in the disbursement of student loans. Education must remain a right, not a casualty, even in times of crisis. But support for vulnerable populations cannot be effective without coordination. One major challenge we face is the lack of access and updated information on donor agencies operating in crisis zones. There is an urgent need for structured data sharing frameworks between humanitarian actors and national governments. Transparency breeds efficiency. Humanitarian norms are not abstract ideals, they are promises we make to humanity that even in darkest times, we must protect life, dignity, and hope. So I urge this assembly, let us commit not only to protecting humanitarian space, but to expanding it. Let us place young people at the heart of decision-making, not on the margins. Include them in peace processes, fund their initiatives, let them sit at the table not as a token voice, but as equal partners. This will guarantee a future where humanitarian norms are upheld, not just in treaties, but in practice. It must be a future co-created with the youth. In conclusion, I urge this assembly to continue building frameworks that do not just respond to crises, but anticipate and prevent them while centering human dignity and equity in all our actions. I thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you. Now, Singapore, you have the floor.
President. Madam President, Singapore has always championed the rules-based multilateral system. We acceded to the Geneva Conventions in 1973, 8 years after our independence, because we understood international humanitarian law protects us all. But commitment means more than words. Singapore has provided annual contributions to UNHCR since 2001. We work closely with the Singapore Red Cross to deliver aid regionally and beyond. Our armed forces incorporate IHL training at every level, and we actively participate in regional consultations on emerging challenges from autonomous weapons to cyber warfare. Singapore has moved to de-friction humanitarian funding. Our Parliament approved the 2024 budget that created a 100% tax deduction for overseas humanitarian donations from 2025 to 2028. Regionally, we invest in local responders and regular armed forces deployments. Local capacity is and must be the first and last mile of humanitarian action. We pair relief with long-term investments in the development of fellow developing countries. The Singapore Cooperation Programme, or SCP, established in 1992, is Singapore's platform for extending technical assistance and sharing governance and systems know-how. The SCP has hosted close to 150,000 officials from more than 180 countries and territories, as well as international and regional organizations. With such actions in raising local humanitarian funding, investing in local actors, and fostering economic development, we hope to play our role in tackling humanitarian problems as effectively and as structurally as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, conference. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Dan Carden, a Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom representing the city of Liverpool. We meet at a moment when the language of humanitarianism is invoked more often than it is heeded. The gap between what is proclaimed and what is practiced on the ground has grown shamefully wide, and closing it is not a question of intentions, but one of power, legitimacy, and political will. The Assembly is right to affirm the importance of humanitarian norms, the sanctity of human life, but we should be candid about the forces that sustain or corrode them. Principles endure only when rooted in institutions capable of enforcing them, and those institutions draw their strength from the consent of people. And parliaments are essential to this task. We may not be the ones negotiating ceasefires, but we shape the political conditions that make them possible. And there is in fora of this sort a recurring belief that moral consensus can substitute for political and economic settlement. But this way, humanitarianism winds up admired, cited, and ignored. Multilateralism must be more than the rhetoric of values. It must mean something to the people whose lives and taxes sustain it. The same realism should guide our approach to the Assembly's subject item of illegal international adoption and to ongoing wars and growing civil unrest. Nothing will substitute for politics grounded in democratic consent, especially as it's worth saying at an occasion like this. The issues of aid and immigration in many developed countries have become politically divisive footballs. When international bodies act without regard for these essential principles of democratic consent, they risk appearing as moral custodians without a mandate. But our parliaments are capable of building the democratic consent for the action needed to end wars and meet the scale of human need. If we can heal the division and polarization sustained by modern online communication and the political extremes. Internationalism rests on our capacity to turn compassion into credible action, to protect humanitarian workers, and to deliver essential aid and protect human life. Congress, thank you.
Thank you. Canada, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are we doing okay? Can I just do a health check with everybody that is here today? Okay. My name is Ikra Khalid. I'm the Member of Parliament in Mississauga, Erin Mills. Look, I'll be honest with you guys. For the past 100 years, we've built multilateral organizations, we've fostered dialogues, we've made countless speeches, and yet here we are, facing humanitarian crises that have shattered lives, that have displaced millions of people and have tested the moral strength of our global community. And we all share the blame. Our democratic systems that we built were designed to prevent exactly the situation that we are in right now. We were designed to create societies grounded in the rule of law, to create equality and to create justice, societies where people not only live together, but thrive together. Democracy is not a slogan. It is a tool, a living, evolving instrument through which we build cohesive, compassionate, and fair communities. And as parliamentarians, we are the wielders of that tool. It is our duty and our responsibility to ensure that democracy continues to serve its true purpose, and that is to build equality of opportunity for every human being. Equality of opportunity is the foundation of prosperity and of trust, but over the years, we've let it erode. When young people are excluded from democratic systems, we lose innovation, passion, and boldness that we need to solve humanitarian challenges of our time, from climate change to conflict, to fight for human rights, to land and rights to our bodily autonomy. Democracy needs to be recalibrated, not replaced, to meet the realities of our changing world. So I challenge us collectively to really be bold and bring in the innovation that young people have to solve the challenges of our time, to hold justice and accountability as pillars of how we function as democracies in our world. We need to be prudent enough to empower young to lead in business, in science, and in civic reform, in artificial intelligence and in technology, because when we're talking about humanitarian crises, they only occur because we have let democracy fail, because we have let equality of opportunity fail, and we have let power be consolidated in small little pockets and not be distributed to the entirety of our civilization. Every single life matters, and we, as the IPU, have the opportunity to make sure that we are putting every single life at the forefront of how we conduct politics. And let me be clear, politics has no place in human rights. We need to make sure that we are collaborating and being inclusive and making sure that equality of opportunity is at the forefront of how we conduct ourselves as democracies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Russia, you have the floor.
Уважаемые коллеги, для меня большая честь выступать здесь от имени молодых парламентариев России. Тематика соблюдения гуманитарных норм и поддержка гуманитарной деятельности во время кризиса очень обширна. Сегодня мы видим интенсивный рост на всей планете стремления к настоящему, а не декларируемому равенству вне зависимости от национальности, гражданства и страны и проживания, к реальной, а не показной защите людей, их достоинства, их жизни. Именно поэтому в эпоху нынешних глобальных потрясений для нас по-новому раскрывается возможность такого инструмента, как международное гуманитарное право. Общая задача для нас, парламентариев, защищать нормы международного права. Будущее человечества зависит от нашей способности не просто отстаивать базовые гуманитарные ценности, а обеспечивать неукоснительное их воплощение в жизнь. Российские парламентарии всегда готовы делиться с коллегами опытом работы. Несмотря на беспрецедентные санкции, Россия занимается масштабной гуманитарной деятельностью во многих странах и регионах и является одним из мировых лидеров в этой области. Так, по данным на август текущего года, было проведено уже 9 операций чрезвычайного гуманитарного реагирования. Я хотел бы сделать особый акцент на роли молодежи в этом важном процессе. Необходимо как можно больше молодежи и молодых парламентариев вовлекать в гуманитарную деятельность. Особо отмечу, что высокая доля в составе персонала и волонтеров, работающих на передовой в гуманитарных миссиях Красного Креста в нашей стране, это молодежь в возрасте до 35 лет. Только за последний год десятки тысяч молодых добровольцев по всей России были задействованы в ликвидации последствий чрезвычайных ситуаций. Они делают это подчас без оружия, защищенные только эмблемой Красного Креста и своей верой в правила, которые все мы договорились соблюдать. Они – живое воплощение Женевских конвенций. Мы живем в эпоху турбулентности. Гибридные конфликты, климатические миграции, пандемии испытывают нас на прочность. Но есть неизменный фундамент – это принцип человечности. И он оживает не сколько в кабинетах политиков, сколько в действиях таких же молодых людей, как мы. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you. Armenia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, dear colleagues. It is an honor to address you today on a topic that resonates deeply with my country and our people: upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crisis. We meet at a time when global crises, wars, forced displacements, natural disasters continue to test the resilience of international law and the strength of our collective moral. At the heart of this crisis lies a fundamental question: do we, as a global community, have the will to place human dignity above political divisions? For Armenia, it is not an abstract debate. This is our lived experience. In recent years, our region has faced serious conflict and humanitarian tragedy. Families have been displaced, lives lost, and trust between neighbors harmed. Yet today we stand at a crossroad. Armenia and Azerbaijan have initiated a peace agreement on August 8, 2025, that could mark a historical turning point. But peace is not only about signing documents. It must be rooted in humanitarian values. Respecting international humanitarian law means ensuring the rights and safety of displaced persons, protecting cultural heritage, and providing humanitarian assistance without discrimination. These are not favors, they are obligations we all share as members of the international community. This peace agreement is more than a bilateral arrangement. It is a test case. Can two countries, long divided by conflict, build settlement based on humanitarian norms? If we succeed, it will send a powerful message beyond our borders that even in times of deepest crisis, respect for humanity can lead to a path of peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Distinguished colleagues, it's a great honor to be here again on behalf of young parliamentarians of Thailand. Regarding Cambodia issues as our close and valuable neighbor, the situation along our border, one Thailand neither sought or benefits from it. We did not initiate this conflict, and we regret its occurrence. Peace is not a matter of territory. It is a matter of trust, stability, and shared humanity. Thailand respects sovereignty. We are fully committed to the ceasefire. Peace is the foundation of progress, not only for Thailand or Cambodia, it's for all. In the late 70s, Thailand opened up the borders for hundreds of thousands of Cambodians fleeing the civil war to seek shelter in Thailand. It was an act of compassion and humanitarian principle. Although the wall has ended and the shelter was closed, the Cambodian villages were expanded over decades. We have repeatedly protested. However, Cambodia never responded or taken any action to resolve the issue. Regarding the 18 Cambodian prisoners of war, they are treated accordingly to the international humanitarian laws, particularly the Third Geneva Convention. They have been provided with medical service. ICRC has full access. They will be released and repatriated upon the cessation of hostilities. As a young parliamentarian, I've learned that peace must be protected every day. Thailand remains committed to resolving differences through peaceful means, with good faith and sincerity. Let our border not divide, but become bridges of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ecuador, you have the floor.
Muy buenos días, Presidenta, muy buenos días, compañeros parlamentarios. Es un honor dirigirme a ustedes en representación de la Asamblea Nacional del Ecuador, hoy la asamblea más joven y más femenina de nuestra historia. Una asamblea diversa, con nuevas voces, con miradas frescas y una profunda voluntad de seguir construyendo un nuevo Ecuador. Ser una asamblea joven y con una participación femenina bastante significativa responde a una serie de reformas que garantizan esta participación. Sin embargo, las políticas de cuotas tienen que ir acompañadas de la confianza y de la voluntad de los partidos políticos. Y en ese sentido, quiero resaltar el compromiso del presidente Daniel Noboa en darle la confianza a los jóvenes, no en puestos secundarios, sino en puestos principales, desde donde trabajamos para transformar el país. Desde mi país, también reafirmamos que la cooperación internacional no es un lujo, es una necesidad global. Hoy por hoy, el crimen organizado, el terrorismo, la corrupción, son amenazas que nos afectan a todos. Ninguna nación puede enfrentarlo solo. Desde Ecuador extendemos nuestra mano al mundo para compartir experiencias, fortalecer sistemas de justicia y construir mecanismos de seguridad que protejan la vida y la libertad de nuestras naciones. Reafirmamos el compromiso también de respetar los tratados y los convenios internacionales, así como el fortalecimiento de los mecanismos multilaterales. Vivimos en un mundo interconectado y tenemos que mantenernos juntos. Ecuador ha elegido avanzar. Estamos frente a una nueva generación de políticos y como jóvenes asumimos con responsabilidad ese trabajo, porque el buen trabajo que hagamos nosotros como jóvenes legisladores va a depender de que se le abran las puertas a las futuras generaciones para seguir participando en política. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Now, Peru, you have the floor.
Estimados colegas, muy buenas tardes, señora presidenta. Vivimos una época de conflictos y crisis humanitaria donde los niños, ancianos, mujeres y desplazados son los que sufren con mayor intensidad. En este contexto, las normas humanitarias son compromisos jurídicos y éticos que los Estados estamos obligados a cumplir sin excusas. Los parlamentarios, los parlamentos debemos de asegurar que las leyes garanticen la protección de civiles, la rendición de cuentas ante violaciones y el acceso efectivo de la ayuda humanitaria. La humanidad no puede ser administrada por la conveniencia. El Perú tiene un compromiso inquebrantable con la promoción del derecho internacional humanitario y la defensa de los derechos humanos. Aunque también existe preocupación en mi país y en la comunidad internacional por la reciente aprobación de la ley de amnistía que favorecía a los miembros de las Fuerzas Armadas y de la Policía Nacional procesados y sentenciados por la comisión de delitos graves contra la humanidad. Asimismo, debo señalar que si la utilización de la fuerza es necesaria por la autoridad estatal, se debe ejercer de manera legal, proporcional y razonable. Finalmente, esta Asamblea es el espacio adecuado para que reafirmemos nuestro compromiso de garantizar y el cumplimiento de las normas humanitarias y apoyar la acción humanitaria en la búsqueda de alcanzar una vida digna, con justicia y verdad para nuestros pueblos. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. This concludes the general debate. I have an announcement to make. The afternoon session starts at 3 p.m. with the presentation of new publications and the accountability segment. Everyone is welcome to contribute to it. Thank you.